Chapter 1733. The place where Han Fei was now was already within the range of advanced venerables and peak-level venerables. Further inside, Han Fei could even sense that there were enemies fighting. From time to time, some energy escaped from the void along with the violent hurricanes. However, Han Fei didn't intend to go there immediately. Although the sea-shaking wind pearl was important, such a precious thing shouldn't be swallowed as soon as he got it. Otherwise, if he needed enlightenment after swallowing it, what should he do? Besides, since the sea-shaking wind pearl was invaluable, then, after he got it, many people would definitely go after it, and they wouldn't swallow it immediately. For him, the main purpose of this trip, the sea-shaking wind pearl, was not the sea-shaking wind pearl. Hunting sea demons was the most important thing. Only by hunting could he consider upgrading the time chain as long as he accumulated enough chaotic chi. This was much more important than the sea-shaking wind pearl. Under the guidance of Star Lolth, Han Fei found 1 or 2 people almost every minute. The number of wind demons he encountered was even more than the number of people he found. If possible, Han Fei hoped that this violent hurricane could keep blowing. In this way, more wind demons would be born. There were quite a lot of people in the violent hurricane. Because this time the violent hurricane was too close to the Snow God's temple, many people from the Snow God's temple came. Even Bingxue Chuling and the others had arrived. However, the 100 Demons clan's star gathering array had been activated. God knew how many sea demon experts were in this violent hurricane. At this moment, in a certain wind field about 10,000 kilometers away from the eye of the storm, Bingxue Chuling, 5 peak-level venerables from the Snow God's temple, and some other experts were flashing in the wind. There was a body practitioner with a giant hammer and the 5 elements disciple that Han Fei had met before. He was fighting a group of sea demons and the gale pirates. Among those sea demons, there were a few sea humans. Sea humans actually looked very similar to human beings. If they didn't disguise themselves, they only had gills on their necks, slightly different noses, and their bodies were covered with scales. However, once they disguised themselves, they could totally blend into the human race. At this moment, there were 39 human beings, sea demons, sea humans, and the gale pirates, and the two sides were engaged in a fierce battle. Obviously, the human side was at a disadvantage. Bingxue Chuling and a man with black wings, the two of them together had the power of 2.5 kings. As for the rest, a chaotic battle ensued. Bingxue Chuling shouted coldly, "Li Xuanfeng, this is a trap. Don't keep fighting, retreat to the outside." Hearing this, the black-winged man shouted, "Zhanfeng Tian, move and hold the line. Retreat as you fight." "Ha, you want to retreat now?" It wasn't easy for us to capture the Snow God Palace's Saintus, Wind Cutter Sky's Wind Emissary, and the Avalon of 5 elements disciple. Do you think this is a place where you can leave as you wish? A long-haired half-kingdom realm cultivator on the ship covered in flames and tornadoes shouted, "Gale slash, release, swoosh, swoosh, swoosh." A terrifying half-monarch realm wind blade shot out from the hull of the ship. When it appeared, it slashed through the void. In an instant, it caused a crack in the void and instantly shattered a Windslayer expert. Clang, however, at that moment, above the void, ice froze into a hurricane, and frost and snow fell. A large black sword slashed out with a domineering blow, instantly shattering the great path windblade. Huh. See quelling bizarre treasure? Wow. The Snow God's palace was indeed rich. If I'm not mistaken, Saintus, you already have 1 sea quelling bizarre treasure, right? Now another one? Looks like the Gale Pirate Gang is lucky this time. Even the top Windslayer expert couldn't help but look at Bingxue Chuling in surprise. His status was not much lower than hers. But Bingxue Chuling already had 2 sea quelling bizarre treasures. The Snow Girl really liked Bingxue Chuling. Pan E, the 5 elements disciple, slightly frowned. He was a peak mid-level venerable, and he was secretly retreating, reserving his strength. But it was obvious that he was a bit jealous. Ding, behind them, a giant pincer stretched out of the void. The giant pincer, which was hundreds of meters wide, hit the void. In an instant, the gale collapsed, and Bingshua, Chuling, and the others' retreat was blocked. Swish, swish, some sea humans grabbed a giant net and pulled it wider and wider, as if they were going to catch Bingshua, Chuling, and the others. The moment the giant net appeared, Bingshua, Chuling yelled, "Not good. It's the heaven-trapping cage. Run." Crack, crack, crack. However, at that moment, above the void, the shadow of armor floated in the air, layer upon layer. Clang, even though Bingshua Chuling attacked with her full strength, she only managed to cut 2 pieces of armor. A white-shelled tortoise had appeared out of nowhere and sealed the path with a tortoise-shell formation. The old turtle once said that turtle shells contained the will of the heavens and hid the array, which was the power given to them by God. Once the few ways were blocked, Bingshua Chuling and the others had no way out. At the last moment, Bingshua Chuling took out a snow token. As soon as the token was taken out, the 100-meter-tall illusion of the snow girl stood in the sky. The illusion of the snow girl pointed her finger, trying to break the inescapable net. The half-king level expert of the Gale Pirate Gang also took out a jade slip. A tornado appeared on the jade essence, curving and rolling towards the snow girl's attack. Rumble, a terrifying power burst out in the cage. Even Bingshua Chuling's mouth was bleeding. That 5-element disciple was the only one who used the 5 elements to block the remnant strength of the strike. Haha, the half-king level expert of the Frenzied Blade Pirate Gang laughed and said, "Don't waste your energy. This time, I'm trying to capture you." The captain gave me 6 tornadoes because he was afraid that you would have the King's Strike. Now, the King's Strike is blocked. You have no other way but to surrender. As soon as the heaven-trapping cage array was closed, the power of Bingshua Chuling and the others was completely suppressed. At the last moment, even the 5-element disciple used the King's Strike. However, as the half-king level expert of the Gale Pirate Gang said, they did have a jade slip that could resist the King's Strike. The remaining power of the 3 King's Strikes shook the heaven-trapping cage and wounded everyone. After only 20 seconds, 17 human beings were subdued and completely suppressed. Before this, they would never have thought that they would perish in a mere exploration of the Berserk Hurricane. Clearly, the enemy had come prepared this time. The heaven-trapping cage array, the King's Strike, the sea demons, the sea humans, and the Gale Pirate Gang were all working together. It was indeed hard to defend against. When those people were trapped on the Gale Pirate ship, they all spat out the Sun Moon shells. The people on the Gale Pirate ship all smiled with excitement. Among the sea demons, a shrimp soldier jumped out of the water and stood in the void. "Half of them are ours." The half-king level expert of the Gale Pirate Gang snorted. "When our king returns, he'll give you your share. Now, don't disturb me from collecting the spoils." The half-king level expert looked at Bingshua Chuling with a smile. "Holy Virgin, 2 sea-quelling bizarre treasures. Please." "Humph. Never. Haha. Holy Virgin, which one is more valuable, the treasure or yourself? You should know the difference. Otherwise, if you're willing to spend some time with me, I won't take your treasures. When our king comes, he'll definitely put in a good word for you." Haha, the venerables of the Gale Pirate Gang burst into laughter. "TSK. Old Sheen, that's a great idea. Hee hee, this woman is so beautiful. Old Sheen, I support you." Bingshua Chuling frowned coldly. "Why isn't our teacher here? How could the Gale Pirate Gang and the sea demons dare to come when the violent hurricane appeared at their doorstep?" The half-king Sheen squatted in front of Bingshua Chuling with a wretched smile. "I heard that the king candidate of the Golden Crow Heaven wants to take you back as a furnace? TSK. Do you want me to try? TSK. The Gale Pirate Gang is just SO. Let go of the people of the Snow God's Temple, or I'll make sure you'll never be able to reincarnate." All of a sudden, 2 completely different voices rang out in the raging hurricane. One was creepy, and the other was cold. "Who is it?" A member of the Snow God's Temple exclaimed. "It's Lord Saint Child. Lord Saint Child, let's go. Only the Snow Lady can save us." Someone exclaimed, "Look, on the other side, there's a skull flag. Isn't that the legendary Avengers?" Avengers? Even the venerables of the Gale Pirate Gang changed their expressions greatly. Someone said in surprise, "Old Chin, that must be it. Damn it, it's worth a sea-quelling bizarre treasure." Old Chin narrowed his eyes and said, "Shut up and prepare to fight the enemy." He was a half-king realm expert, after all. The Avengers, who had a sea-quelling bizarre treasure as a reward, were definitely not ordinary people. Besides, this man had killed 3 half-king realm experts in a row. He must not be underestimated. Old Chin shouted, "The 100 demons and the human race at the bottom of the sea. At this point, we're about to succeed. We can't lose here." On the Avengers' ship, Han Fei was wearing a black robe, which was exactly his original appearance. Tong Yi and Bingxue Chuling recognized him at a glance. Bingxue Chuling looked to the other side in surprise, wondering if one of them was Han Fei's clone. Han Fei, the Avengers, looked at the Saint Child and said, "Yo, when did the Snow God's temple hide a half-king? Should I deal with you first, or these people first?" Half-king? Many people of the Snow God's temple were surprised. Isn't the Saint Child a peak-level venerable? How come he's a half-king? Han Fei, the Saint Child, appeared on the ice lotus under him, holding a rod in his hand, and said indifferently, "Let's work together to break the array. I'll take him, and the rest is yours." Chapter 1734. The wind was roaring, and the seawater was corroded into mist, which was quickly blown away. Han Fei's body of black mist and his body of white mist were confronting each other in front of the gale pirates and the sea demons. For Han Fei, he was not in a hurry. He had to put on a good show. His body of black mist was just attached to the projection of his half-king. At this moment, the Avenger Han Fei said, "Why don't you join hands with me?" Holy Child Han Fei said, "Why don't we fight?" Bingxue Chuling was very sure that the two of them were the same person. Seeing that the two of them were acting, it was obvious that Han Fei wanted to cover up his identity as the Avenger. Therefore, Bingxue Chuling had an idea. "Shuizhan, this person is extremely strong. In a short time, he may have the power beyond that of a half-king. Don't underestimate him." Han Fei's body of white mist glanced at Bingxue Chuling casually. "You're quite smart. I'm having fun acting. Of course, I can't kill all of them. It just so happens that I can't turn the Avenger into a real king. A king would only face other kings. It wasn't a good thing to have a high starting point. This battle could change these people's opinion of the Avenger." "Ha!" The Avenger Han Fei laughed wildly. "You're the first person who dares to negotiate with me. Holy Child Shuizhan, interesting. As you wish. Let's cooperate for now. The resources will belong to me, and these people will belong to you." "Humph," someone from the seabed sneered. "You're just 2 half-beast kings. How dare you talk big in front of us?" The white-shelled turtle, the lobster that came out later, Old Chin of the Gale Pirates, and the erased setter of the Sea Humans were all half-kings. Because of this, the moment they revealed their identities, Bingxue, Chuling, and the others couldn't escape. There were 4 half-kings. Therefore, they thought that the Avenger and Holy Child Shuizhan were only 2 half-kings at most. How could they take down all of them? The Avenger Han Fei moved forward in the storm. So did the Holy Child Han Fei. One of them was evil, and the other was cold. One was dressed in a black robe, and the other was dressed in a snow-white cloak. Both looked very proud and aloof, as if 2 great experts were having a duel. Old Chin's expression was cold as he suddenly shouted, "Do it, Buzz!" The Gale Pirate group immediately attacked. On the other side, the wind on the bow of the ship blasted at the Holy Child Han Fei. On the other side, the violent tornado rushed to Han Fei, the Avenger. However, the way they dealt with it was different. Han Fei, the Avenger, stretched out his hand and made a bloody claw mark in the air, full of murderous intent, which was daunting. The illusionary hand grabbed at the rift and crushed the tornado into pieces. As if he had just done a trivial thing, the Avenger suddenly charged at the shrimp soldier closest to him with Black Death energy under his feet. Han Fei, the Avenger, said, "If you let this ship go, the ice-snow world will never have peace." These words were naturally directed at the holy boy, Han Fei, who was still acting. At this moment, the holy boy, Han Fei, immediately used the instant technique, blew up the wind with a spear, and slashed out the embroidery needle in his hand. Old Qin shouted, "Prepare for void teleportation. Don't be greedy. Caution is the parent of safety. Hold on until our king wins." However, Han Fei held the embroidery needle with both hands and shouted, "Open!" Clang, clang, clang. In an instant, the shadow of the rod shot out 100 waves. The terrifying power smashed down like a storm. On the Gale Pirate Group's ship, someone shouted, "Old Qin, the vibration is too great. We can't use void teleportation." Old Qin looked at Han Fei's strength. It seemed that Han Fei was only in the Half-King realm. Although he seemed to be a little stronger than him, it didn't seem to be much stronger. Old Qin roared, "Damn it, the Ice Snow world is only one person. How can you resist the elite Grand Masters of the Gale Pirate Group on my ship? Let me teach you a lesson." In the blink of an eye, the Avenger, Han Fei, drew his knife and cut the Shrimp Soldier in the Half-King realm in an instant. This was the crushing of power, the crushing of the great Tao. The Shrimp Soldier didn't even realize that he, a dignified Half-King realm cultivator, couldn't even resist one blow. Boom! In the sky, the great Tao roared, and a slight crack appeared. After all, the Half-King realm cultivator had died, and the heavens' cry would still come. However, it wasn't that strong. However, everyone was shocked by the strength of the Avenger, Han Fei. He was a F***king Half-King realm cultivator. Not a small fry, but a single blow killed him. How strong was the F***king Avenger, Han Fei? Not only that, when he killed the Shrimp Soldier, Han Fei's figure suddenly appeared from the void and appeared behind a peak-level Venerable. Puff! With one blow, the peak-level Venerable didn't even have time to run. Half of his body escaped into the void, and the other half was cut off. But as a result, the Avenger, Han Fei, reached into the void and grabbed him. With a forceful stomp, he directly crushed it, and the black fog on the Avenger, which was Han Fei's real black fog body, appeared on the body of another peak-level Venerable at some point. As soon as the black fog surrounded him, the flesh and blood on the man's body disappeared, and his body stiffened for no reason, as if he had been frozen. He couldn't even escape. Boom, boom, boom in the sky. There were 3 consecutive roars, and cracks appeared on the great Tao. At that moment, on the hull of the Gale Pirates, the captured people all exclaimed, "So strong! This person is so strong!" Someone was shocked. In an instant, he killed a Half-King realm cultivator and 2 peak-level Venerables. Is he a king? Gulp, someone swallowed his saliva. Is this the legendary Avenger? Just as everyone was shocked by Han Fei, the Avenger, slaughtering 3 great monarchs in a row, with a loud bang, they saw Old Qin, the captain of the fierce Gale pirate ship, who had just gone out to fight Han Fei, being smashed to pieces. They saw that the embroidery needle in Han Fei's hand was getting faster and faster, and it even smashed the formation of the Gale pirate ship. What they didn't notice was that when they focused their eyes on Han Fei, the Avenger, Han Fei secretly stunned Old Qin with the divine spike for a moment. It was at that moment that Old Qin died. What he shouldn't have done was to leave the formation and challenge Han Fei in person. Boom! At the moment when Old Qin was smashed away, everyone saw that Han Fei suddenly deviated a kilometer and smashed his rod into the void. Old Qin tried to escape back to the ship with his soul and fight for a chance to be reborn with a single drop of blood. But Han Fei seized the opportunity and killed him with one blow. Boom! Everyone just turned their heads and were shocked. In a short time, 2 Half-Kings had died, and 2 peak-level Venerables had died. How strong were these 2 people? How could they be so strong? However, when Han Fei was fighting, the seabed human was not doing nothing. The big net had been opened, and in the void behind him, a big lobster stretched out its huge pincer again. Bing Shui shouted, "Watch out for the heavenly cage array." Han Fei had already seen this move. How could he be fooled? The holy child Han Fei suddenly turned around, held his rod with both hands, and stabbed out like a horse stance. The void changed, and Han Fei knocked on the heavenly gate. Under the shocked gazes of the experts of the Snow God's Temple and the Wind Slasher Pirates, Han Fei stabbed the 100-meter-long giant pincer into pieces. Not only the giant pincer, but also most of its head was shattered. At the moment when the big lobster was stabbed, the Avenger, Han Fei, appeared there with a star shift. He clenched the void lines, and the seawater turned into billions of blades, instantly cutting into the body of the big lobster. With the cooperation of the two, another half-king died in less than half a second. At this moment, everyone present panicked. The 100 demons, the seabed human, and the gale pirates were all dumbfounded. Where did these two come from? Why are they so strong? There were only a few half-kings in total, and only the seabed human and the white-shelled turtle were left. As soon as the lobster died, the heavenly cage array collapsed. The seabed human roared, "Let's go!" The white-shelled turtle had already disappeared. In the eyes of these people, the Avenger, Han Fei, and the Holy Child Shuezhan were too efficient. The two of them only targeted the half-kings and the peak-level venerables. He killed 3 half-king realm experts in a single move, and even a peak venerable realm expert couldn't react in time. How could they fight them? Even the half-kings had died. Were they going to get themselves killed? This time, Han Fei didn't care about the escaping seabed human, but looked at the body of white mist and continued to act. "I didn't expect that there would be someone like you in the ice and snow world. Why don't we have a fight?" However, the body of white mist said coldly, "Finish it quickly. When the half-kings come, you won't be able to escape." Humph! The others had already escaped, and the Avenger, Han Fei, bombarded the big ship with his blood-stained fist marks. Holy Child Han Fei knocked the heavenly gate with a spear. With just one blow, a gap was blasted in the formation of the big ship. At the moment when the formation of ships was broken, some people jumped off the ship and fled, and some tried to take hostages. However, the Avenger, Han Fei, appeared on the big ship and started a bloody massacre. Before these people could take action, they were almost dead. On the same ship, only the 3 people who jumped off the ship first could really escape. At this moment, the 17 people from the Shintian sect who were tied up looked at each other in shock. The situation was reversed 2F* King fast. The Avenger, Han Fei, glanced at Bingxue, Chuling, and the others, which gave them goosebumps. Among them, the 5-element disciple was horrified. This man was full of murderous intent. Last time, he was lucky enough to escape. Who knew that he would meet him again in just a few days? Just when everyone was horrified, the Holy Child Han Fei grabbed a pile of sun moon shells and said, "The resources you want are all here. If you don't let them go, I will throw them into the endless void." The Avenger, Han Fei, said gloomily, "This 5-element disciple belongs to me. I have a personal grudge against him. If you don't give them to me, these people will die. As for the resources, I can get more. First, asking for votes." End of this chapter. Chapter 1735. Tong Yi's heart turned cold on the spot. The strength that this fellow had displayed just now was already terrifying enough. Even a half-monarch realm expert couldn't withstand 2 moves from him. At this moment, the other party had specifically asked him to stay. At this critical moment, staying would only mean death. Even Bingxue Chuling was a little stunned. If Han Fei wanted to kill Bo Yi, then Bo Yi would definitely die. She roughly knew the reason, but she didn't expect Han Fei to be so vengeful. The Holy Child replied indifferently, "Fine." In that instant, Tong Yi shouted, "Brother Shui, I am one of the 5-elements disciples. If Brother Shui protects me, I will gain the friendship of the Avalon of 5 elements." Han Fei, the Avenger, asked with great interest, "What do you think?" The Holy Child said calmly, "I don't need friendship." Then Avenger Han Fei suddenly grabbed Bo Yi, stepped into the void, and said, "Give me the resources." Han Fei, the Holy Child, threw a pile of sun moon shells at him without hesitation. He acted right away, ripping open the heaven-trapping cage formation from the outside. While everyone was rejoicing over their narrow escape, they heard the voice of the Avenger, Han Fei, floating over from the big black ship in the distance. Interesting. I hope we can work together again in the future. Buzz, the Avenger, broke through the wind and left. Although the Venerables watched Han Fei give up on the Five Elements disciples, fortunately, their lives were saved. Everyone thought that if someone was to be blamed for this matter, it would not be Holy Child Shuizhan's fault, but that person. If you have nothing better to do, why did you take the initiative to provoke the Avenger? Which pirate who dared to openly plunder didn't have a few tricks up his sleeve? Did he really think he was so arrogant just because he was the disciple of a king? Now that he had encountered a tough opponent, wouldn't he be crushed? The black-feathered youth said, Brother Shui, I'm Li Xuanfeng of Windslasher Heaven. If it wasn't for Brother Shui's help, I would have died. I thank Brother Shui. The expert from the Thunderfire Heaven said, Lin Xiang of the Thunderfire Heaven thanks Lord Holy Child. If there's a need in the future, Lin Xiang won't refuse. The people of the Snow God's Palace also said, Thank you for your help, Lord Holy Child. Someone said with a red face, Lord Holy Child, I am truly ashamed. I really shouldn't have doubted your strength before. Han Fei glanced at the man casually. Who is this? If I don't remember, then forget it. Han Fei said casually, I saved you because I didn't have to. However, that Han Fei is extremely powerful. If I go all out, I probably won't be a match for him. If we encounter them in the future, just run away. Everyone was taken aback. So, Lord Holy Child's attention was all on Han Fei. However, when they thought of Han Fei, they were all secretly horrified. That man was indeed terrifying. Even a half-king realm expert was nothing in front of him. This was the first time they had seen a pirate who dared to go against the whole Gale pirate crew in the middle of a violent hurricane. They guessed that even if Saint Child Shuizhan was not there, Han Fei could still keep a lot of people here. Bing Xue didn't want to ask Han Fei what he was going to do with the dead one. She simply asked, Teacher must have been stalled by someone, right? This means that there are many monarchs here, and this sea-quaking breeze pearl will be difficult to obtain. Someone said, Yeah, Lord Holy Child, although violent hurricanes aren't common in this region of the sea, it's not easy to see them. However, it would always appear once every few years. Let's fight for it next time, shall we? However, Han Fei snorted. I said I'll take it, so I'll take it. Then, Han Fei looked at Bing Xue and said, You either go back or go to the edge. I don't know what's going on in the eye of the storm. I'll go and check it out. Bing Xue nodded slightly. Be careful. The reason why she agreed so quickly was that she knew Han Fei's real strength. As a master of the Yinyang Fairy Palace, Han Fei probably had the combat power of a king. However, they couldn't do it. Bing Xue knew the horror of the Pioneer Sea realm because she had been with a king for a long time. There was an almost insurmountable gap between a king and a venerable. If they really wanted to fight, the result would be no different from courting death. A moment later, on the Avenger, the Five Elements disciples were uneasy. He said, Your Excellency, what happened last time was really a misunderstanding. I know I can't refute it, but it's useful. The Avalon of Five Elements is not weak among the 13 outer heavens. If you need resources, I think I'm valuable enough. Han Fei smiled contemptuously. I'm not short of money. That's why I caught you. I just want to tell you one thing so that everyone here knows. Sniping the Avenger comes with a price. Puff, Han Fei simply sent him to hell. With his current wealth, he didn't lack anything. How could he talk about money with him? Han Fei steered the Avenger, sailing in the hurricane, and counted the spoils on the way. Unfortunately, he didn't get many good things. In the Sun Moon shell, there were the power of the Five Elements and dozens of bottles of various elixirs. In addition, there were 8 ultra-quality divine weapons and more than 600,000 ultra-quality spiritual stones. Han Fei was speechless. Are these people really so rich? And they're only at the peak of the intermediate venerable realm. They're even richer than a half-king. There's nothing else to say except that he's lucky. However, no one had a sea-quelling bizarre treasure in their Sun Moon shells. Of course, he would return Bing Xue's Sun Moon shell to her later. All in all, he made a big profit by robbing a large number of resources, which doubled his wealth. Han Fei's resources were so abundant that he couldn't use them all. However, no one would dislike having more resources. The White Armor Emperor had hidden a large number of resources. He couldn't be satisfied with such a small profit. The people outside were used to living a rich life. It was time for him to have a good fortune. Han Fei suppressed his temper. After half an hour, he pointed with the nautical panorama and found that the sea-shaking wind pearl was still in the eye of the storm, so he didn't go there. Han Fei hunted a few more times outside alone. Every time Han Fei hunted, if it was alone, he would kill it. If it wasn't alone, he would kill half and let the other half go. In the eye of the storm, Han Fei killed 7 sea demons in one round. He also killed 45 wind demons along the way. He had already broken through 2,000 wisps of chaotic chi, reaching as many as 2,304 wisps. After all, many half-kings had died in Han Fei's hands, and those below the half-king realm, even those at the peak-level venerable level, didn't have much chaotic chi. It could be seen that if he wanted to loot the chaotic chi from the sea demons, then he had to start with the sea demons at the half-king realm. Han Fei was about to find some more wind demons to fight, when he suddenly sensed something, and the old turtle warned, "Run." In the blink of an eye, in the strong wind, the sky changed color, and 3 huge tentacles sealed a part of the space. Han Fei must have been a robber, so the king of the 100 Demons clan had to come to find him in person. If they didn't come, they would be slaughtered by Han Fei. This was supposed to be a plan to hunt the human race, but they ended up losing their own people. Just for this, they even sent a king. If the other kings of the 100 Demons clan knew about this, they would laugh their heads off. Therefore, a king of the 100 Demons clan deliberately ignored the battle and came here to hunt. However, at the moment when its tentacles attacked, Han Fei immediately put away the Avenger. At the same time, his strength soared to the strongest, and he began to flee frantically. At this time, the body of black fog was fleeing, and the body of white fog was running in the opposite direction. As the old turtle said, in such a wind field, kings and venerables could perceive each other. However, their perception range would be greatly reduced. Therefore, as long as the body of white fog ran far away, these kings couldn't really catch him. Of course, as the captain of the Avenger, who was said to be comparable to a king, he couldn't be killed without doing anything that would definitely arouse suspicion. Therefore, Han Fei had to pretend to escape. Bam! The void barrier was shaking violently. A deep voice sounded. Han Fei, the Avenger, you can't escape today. Han Fei sneered. It turns out to be a big octopus. What? Do you think you're so big? I've been craving octopus fish recently. Give me some skewers. Umph. Han Fei activated the blade purgatory, and the murderous intent within 300 kilometers was dense. Unfortunately, this was in the violent hurricane. Otherwise, the blade purgatory would only be stronger. Clang, 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 clang. Han Fei drew his knife from the void and was about to fight, when he saw the shadows of tentacles all over the sky, slapping down hard. Damn it! Kill! Han Fei roared, and the tide under him turned into knives and slashed at the void tentacles all over the sky. This time, he didn't even see the shadow of the king, only a few tentacles. If he was defeated so easily, how could he be called an Avenger? Puff, 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 Han Fei's aura weakened a little. However, the vast sea as a blade still managed to withstand this attack. Besides, Han Fei not only withstood the blow, but also shattered the void seal. Hey, big octopus, come out and fight me. At that moment, a figure appeared in the void, but it was an octopus with a human head and slippery tentacles everywhere. Forbidden spell here. Swish, Han Fei directly cast a forbidden spell. The octopus king's face changed immediately. This man is not a king, but he has a lot of means. This forbidden technique was no laughing matter. What would happen if he reached the Pioneer Sea state? BM, as soon as the octopus threw out its tentacles, the void almost collapsed, and the Tao here was forcibly destroyed. Taking advantage of this moment, Han Fei directly performed the void teleportation that he had long prepared. Asshole, the Octopus King didn't expect that Han Fei was waiting for it to break the forbidden spell. Of course, the Octopus King didn't use all its power to break the forbidden spell. One of its tentacles tried to wrap around Han Fei. However, Han Fei used the closed distance technique and ran further away. So, a strange sound wave directly broke through the void. When Han Fei teleported, it fell on Han Fei's body. Han Fei's body of black fog collapsed halfway through the void teleportation. After all, this was just a body of black fog, not his real body, so it didn't matter that it couldn't withstand this blow. After the twins returned to one, Han Fei sighed. This trip to the violent hurricane should come to an end. He couldn't mess with this king anymore. It turned out that up to now, any king he met could crush him. As the saying went, if you always walk by the river, you will get your shoes wet. Han Fei made up his mind. After taking this sea-shaking wind pearl, he would go into seclusion and break through to the half-king realm again. Second, asking for votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 1736. Among the 36 Xuantians, there was a consensus that the Yin-Yang Dao of the Yin-Yang Heaven was the best escape technique. Perhaps they didn't want to admit how powerful the Yin-Yang Dao was, but they had to admit that it was difficult for those who had mastered the Yin-Yang Dao to die. He guessed that the Octopus King must be bursting with anger. He only made a slight mistake and only had time to touch Han Fei. He didn't know whether he was dead or not. Anyway, Han Fei was gone. At this moment, Han Fei entered Forge the Universe for a short time to rest and heal his injuries. Then he appeared in the hurricane again as a saint child. In the eye of the storm, the vision was extremely clear and the air was extremely fresh, but the temperature had dropped a lot. However, there were 4 kings fighting fiercely here. Chun Guangjia, the captain of the Gale Pirates whom Han Fei had seen before, and a king who looked like a sea human, were fighting the Snow Lady and a man whose figure was blurred and looked like a floating ghost. The Snow Lady said, "Chun Guangjia, if the kings of the 100 demon clans can't all come today, let's see how you can escape unscathed. If you want to leave, you have to ask for my permission first." Suddenly, an octopus tentacle broke out of the void. A deep voice rang out, "Retreat." Chun Guangjia seemed to have received some information from this octopus, but soon after, his expression became extremely unsightly. An entire ship of his subordinates had been wiped out. This was the second time today that his crew had been wiped out. Both times, his subordinates on the 2 ships died one after another in an instant. Before he could rush over, everyone would already be dead. When second Brother Qin died, Chun Guangjia quickly concluded that the murderer must be Han Fei of the Avengers. He thought to himself, since Han Fei is a pirate, he won't let go of those human heavenly talents easily. Therefore, he sent a message to the Octopus King through the wind, not to kill Han Fei, but to intercept those human heavenly talents. But damn it, this guy said that the human heavenly talents escaped, and he didn't see any of those human heavenly talents. It was supposed to be a flawless plan, but at this moment the chicken had been smashed and the eggs had been smashed. He didn't catch the human heavenly talents, but he lost 2 ships. At this moment, he was on the verge of exploding. The purpose of this inescapable net was to capture Bingxue Chuling. No one knew why he did this except for himself. But now, everything was for naught. One could imagine that the losses this time were simply too great. The other kings also noticed that something was wrong with Chun Guangjia. All of a sudden, Chun Guangjia attacked the center of the eye of the storm. There was a faint cyan mist of light swirling there. A sparkling pearl was truly absorbing the great Tao of wind that was gathering from all directions. In the instant that Chun Guangjia made his move, the person next to the Snow Lady, who should be the Windslayer King, also made his move. This person was the same as Chun Guangjia. Perhaps it was because they both cultivated in the great Tao of wind, but logically speaking, they should be the type to harvest each other's leeks. The 2 of them instantly started fighting. At this moment, the Snow Lady was a little confused. Chun Guangjia was trying to get rid of us. So why did he provoke the sea-quaking wind pearl? That thing was useless to him, right? However, it was just a pearl. How could it withstand the impact of the battle between two kings? The sea-quaking wind pearl was thrown into the raging hurricane by the airwaves from the battle between the two. Chun Guangjia yelled, F***CK, I didn't get any benefits because of you. Then you will die with my subordinates. Chun Guangjia laughed loudly, and the jade tablet on his waist vibrated. Fierce Wind Pirate Team, retreat from the hurricane immediately. Immediately after that, a tornado was formed with Chun Guangjia as the center. The Windslayer King saw this and instantly exclaimed, Chun Guangjia, are you crazy? If you seal the eye of the storm, the great Tao of wind in the entire raging hurricane will only become stronger and stronger. You're not only slaughtering humans, you are also slaughtering monsters. The human expert from the bottom of the sea also yelled, Chun Guangjia, what do you mean? What happened to the plan we agreed on? The octopus of the 100 demons also yelled angrily, Chun Guangjia, you broke the agreement. Your fierce wind pirate team will become the prey of the 100 demons. Tisk, the wind around Chun Guangjia became louder and louder. He sneered, when doing business with pirates, you must be prepared to change your plans at any time. Ha! See you guys later. The human expert from the bottom of the sea shouted, Bastard! The octopus of the 100 demons roared angrily. 100 demons, retreat from the raging hurricane. Boom! Chun Guangjia disappeared in the wind with a series of explosions. The Windslayer King said he sacrificed one of his body of wind. He is willing to sacrifice 10% of his strength to seal the eye of the storm. I will go find the sea-quaking wind pearl and inform the others to retreat. Swoosh, swoosh, once Chun Guangjia left, the Snow Lady raised her ice staff. Countless icicles formed in the sealed eye of the storm and shot toward the human expert from the bottom of the sea. The human expert yelled, Snow Lady, why are you bothering me instead of finding the sea-quaking wind pearl? The Snow Lady said, someone has to pay the price. I don't have the ability to find the wind pearl, but I can make you stay. The Snow Lady didn't look good. She had thought that there would be 1 or 2 kings of the 100 Demon Clan coming over. Who would have thought that the fierce Gale pirate group, the 100 Demon Clan, and the sea humans would set up an ambush and even hold back the kings of the human race? Fortunately, Chun Guangjia's plan didn't go as planned. In a fury, Chun Guangjia sealed the eye of the storm and made the hurricane even more violent. If this went on, the Great Tao Wind Pearl wouldn't be able to break through the seal and gather again. As a result, more and more spatial cracks appeared in the hurricane. Those below the advanced venerable level couldn't survive in the raging hurricane. After all, the Great Tao Wind Pearl that was supposed to be absorbed by the sea-quaking wind pearl was running amok in the hurricane. The sea-quaking wind pearl was blasted into the hurricane. Even a king couldn't find it. After all, the Great Tao Wind Pearl could affect one's senses. Even a king couldn't avoid it. Chun Guangjia sacrificed part of his strength to prepare for 2 things. One was to seal the eye of the storm. This kind of seal could be broken. However, the Windslayer King needed to expend more energy to break it. But what could he do even if he broke it? It would take at least 5 days for the sea-quaking wind pearl to be completely condensed. Even if it was condensed again, the power in the raging hurricane would only get stronger and stronger. If the hurricane got stronger and stronger, it would be equivalent to the collapse of a void spanning 100,000 kilometers. Countless creatures would be sucked into the endless void. This was also the reason why the Windslayer King went out to look for the sea-quaking wind pearl. Han Fei was rushing to the eye of the storm when he suddenly found that the wind around him was getting stronger and stronger. Han Fei didn't know what was going on. At this moment, even an advanced venerable couldn't resist the power of the core wind field for long. Besides, the whistling sound was still getting stronger. Even the spatial cracks were being scraped out. Wasn't this a bit exaggerated? The old turtle said, something's wrong. In the hurricane, the Great Tao of Wind has a place to go. Since it has a place to go, it won't create spatial cracks. I'm afraid something has happened inside. Han Fei wondered, is this abnormal? The old turtle nodded. No, Han Fei thought of something. If there were kings fighting in the eye of the storm, wouldn't it be asking for a fight if he went there? And he would expose his strength for nothing. But if he didn't go there, Han Fei didn't know what was going on. Han Fei pondered for a moment and threw a projection over. The projection descended. The projection of the Saint Child, who was at the peak level of the venerable realm, broke the wind barrier with a puff and entered the eye of the storm. As a result, Han Fei was surprised to find that the Snow Lady was fighting with an Atlantean. Han Fei's abrupt appearance made the Snow Lady's eyes light up. She shouted, "Snow battle!" The sea-quaking wind pearl was blasted into the hurricane by Chun Guangjia of the Gale Pirates. "You must find the sea-quaking wind pearl and bring it back. Otherwise, the hurricane will get stronger and stronger. In the end, the power of the great Tao will disperse in the hurricane, or the entire wind field will be sucked into the endless void." Han Fei was dumbfounded. What the hell would be sucked into the endless void? Was there something wrong with Chun Guangjia's head? Didn't you trick the 100-demon race and the ocean human race as well? Hearing this, Han Fei was dumbfounded. He turned around and left, not even leaving behind a single word. Han Fei's real body was also dumbfounded at this moment. He cursed, "Chen Guangjia is a big idiot. He's even crazier than the 4 Mad Kings. If such a huge wind field collapses, how many venerables will die?" The old turtle asked, "Is the wind pearl gone?" Han Fei snorted. "No, I have to find it." The nautical panorama appeared in Han Fei's hand. Crack, 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 the nautical panorama spun rapidly. Seeing this, Han Fei didn't feel good at all. He activated the power of the great Tao and quickly chased after it. In this violent hurricane, the bead's movement speed was extremely fast. Therefore, the nautical panorama also spun super fast. Fortunately, when Han Fei's speed soared, the nautical panorama slowed down. In just over 10 minutes, Han Fei stabilized the rotation speed of the nautical panorama. Although there was still a slight shake, he could already observe it. However, after a while, the effect of the nautical panorama disappeared. After all, the nautical panorama could only be used 3 times a day. It wouldn't point endlessly and could only provide help for a few minutes. As soon as Han Fei made some progress, the nautical panorama stopped. In this case, how could he find the pearl? Fine, let's take a gamble. Han Fei maintained an extremely high speed. The nautical panorama could only be used once today. This was the last time. If it was used up, he would have to call for help and run away. Crack, 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 seeing the nautical panorama spinning again. Han Fei's figure broke through the wind and darted around in the wind and waves swish. When Han Fei saw a flash of light cyan light in front of him, he was shocked. Found it! Damn, so fast! Han Fei hurriedly chased after the cyan light. In the blink of an eye, the two drilled through thousands of kilometers in the gale. Han Fei's speed was superimposed with the closed distance technique. If it were anyone else, they might not be able to catch up with him. Han Fei's void big hand blocked in front of the wind pearl. With a loud bang, his void hand was almost shattered. But Han Fei cursed, "Son of a b******. If it weren't for the nautical panorama, I would be blind now." Third watch. Asking for votes. Smita. End of this chapter. Chapter 1737. Han Fei grabbed the sea-shaking wind pearl. As soon as he stopped, he saw several powerful wind demons around him. Han Fei turned around and found that the strength of one of the wind demons had soared to the quasi-king realm. This should be the result of swallowing a lot of wind demons, but the speed of improvement was too fast. In just a few days, this violent hurricane was able to create a quasi-king realm wind demon. While Han Fei was surprised, the old turtle said, "Your strength is just a facade. If this little wind demon can swallow the wind pearl, it can become a wind spirit. Once this violent hurricane is gone, it will just be a wind spirit. Its strength is at most a peak-level law enforcer." Han Fei breathed a sigh of relief and thought to himself, "You scared me. Do you really think it will only take 7 days to create a quasi-king realm wind demon in this violent hurricane?" Han Fei drew his knife from the void and cut these wind demons into pieces. However, the most powerful quasi-king realm wind demon was reborn with the help of the wind. Not only was it reborn, but dense wind blades burst out on the surface of the wind demon's body. Its power was no weaker than Han Fei's million knife art. Clang, 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 clang. The old turtle said again, although the wind has receded, it is still very weak. But in this wind, it is still very strong. Han Fei curled his lips. There is no wind here. Then the void froze. This stillness only lasted for a very short moment. After all, the power of Han Fei's imagination couldn't compete with the violent hurricane full of the great wave of wind. However, at this moment, Han Fei drew his knife again. This time, he drew a wind blade from the wind demon's body and cut it in half. Han Fei reached out and grabbed a great wave wind grain. That single pellet contained a total of 30 strands of primal chaos energy. Han Fei was quite shocked by the number. He really hoped that there would be more wind demons like this. In this wave alone, Han Fei harvested more than 50 wisps of chaotic energy. Han Fei held the sea-shaking wind pearl in his hand and glanced at it. Information appeared in his eyes. Name: Wind Pearl, incomplete. Introduction: a crystallization of the great way of wind. After taking it, one can understand the way of controlling the wind and has a certain chance to comprehend the great way of wind. The wind pearl contained a large amount of primal chaos chi, which could be swallowed directly. If a creature in the wind consumed it, there was a certain chance that it would gain sentience and become a spirit of the world. Level: venerable level, quality, divine quality, contains chaotic energy, 168 wisps. Note: the wind bead can be taken directly, but it needs to be comprehended calmly. Han Fei read the introduction of the wind pearl and was surprised to find that it was a divine quality crystal. Furthermore, this tiny bead actually contained 168 strands of chaotic chi, and it was only in an incomplete state. The most important thing was not how much chaotic chi was contained in the wind bead, but how could it lure the wind demon over. As long as he kept holding on to the wind pearl, didn't it mean that there would be an endless supply of chaotic chi coming to him? That Qingguangjia was really his lucky star. He had given him another wave of benefits. However, at this time, Han Fei was still busy. Now, Han Fei had to hurry to the eye of the storm. In this place, one's perception was not smooth, and sound was also obliterated in the wind field. There were definitely many people hunting. Although these people had nothing to do with Han Fei, they were still venerables. How could it be so easy to become a venerable? If something really happened, Han Fei wouldn't be able to bear it. Han Fei broke through the wind without any scruples. A moment later, with a bang, Han Fei broke through the wind, holding the wind pearl in his hand, and looked at the snow lady who was still fighting with the sea human king. Han Fei said in surprise, "Are they still fighting?" Seeing that Han Fei had retrieved the sea-shaking wind pearl earlier than the Wind Lord, the snow lady was surprised. How did he find it? But at this moment, the eye of the storm had already fallen into the domain of ice and snow. The sea human king wanted to escape, so he was locked in a fierce battle with the snow lady. The king of the sea humans was surprised to see that Han Fei had found the wind pearl. But then his eyes turned cold, and a projection appeared and charged at Han Fei. The projection of a sea human king was only half a sea human king. Han Fei didn't move at all, but said indifferently, "What makes you think that a sea human king can kill me?" Han Fei stretched out his hand, and the embroidery needle appeared in his hand. Hundreds of beasts devoured souls. The projection paused. Han Fei stabbed the heavenly gate with his rod and blew up the projection of this sea human king. The sea human king was stunned too. Wait, the projection of a sea human king is gone just like that? Han Fei sneered and instantly raised his strength to the strongest state. Han Fei had killed sea human kings before, but he knew that even sea human kings had their limits and could be killed. When he was about to attack, he heard a bang, and the Wind Lord broke through the wind and returned. Han Fei immediately concealed his strength, and the Wind Lord looked at Han Fei in surprise. "You found him?" The snow lady hurriedly shouted. "Ling Feng, stop him." Ling Feng should be the Wind Lord's name. At this moment, the two sea human kings attacked. The sea human king's face changed greatly, and he quickly retreated, holding a withered ancient stick in his hand. At that moment, Han Fei saw at least 100 wisps of chaotic energy being injected into the ancient stick. A centipede thousands of feet long slithered out of the ancient stick. The sea human king bellowed, "Snow lady, Ling foam, I'll remember you." Rumble, the ancient stick and the centipede detonated at the same time. The endless dark green poison instantly pierced through the ice domain. Han Fei quickly retreated and raised a giant shield in front of him. Thud, Han Fei was shaken back, but fortunately, a gust of wind held him back. There was also a large gust of wind in front of him. In fact, Han Fei could deal with this force by himself. However, since the Wind Lord had taken action, he didn't have to show more power. The terrifying self-explosion swept across tens of thousands of kilometers around. Even a violent hurricane with unparalleled power was filled with this force, and the wind speed was slowed down. In the billowing smoke and dust caused by the self-explosion of the sea-quelling bizarre treasure, only Han Fei, the Snow Lady, and the Wind Lord were left in the eye of the storm. In addition to the power of the explosion, the entire eye of the storm was now filled with poisonous fog. Han Fei took a deep breath, and his skin began to turn slightly darker. The Snow Lady was about to help Han Fei detoxify, but the blackness on Han Fei's body began to fade slowly. Han Fei exclaimed in his heart, "What a powerful poison!" Fortunately, he had completely accommodated the detoxifying power of the Heaven Spirit detoxifying insect. Otherwise, he would have been poisoned to death. No, when I go back, I have to eat all the poisonous flowers and herbs collected from the Thousand Treasure Pavilion in the south. I have to improve my detoxification ability first. Huh, the Wind Lord said in surprise. Although I heard that there are hidden heavenly talents in the Snow God's palace, I didn't expect them to be so extraordinary. They can even resist the heavenly centipede poison? The Snow Lady said lightly. Shuizhan has an extraordinary physique and knows about medicine since he was a child. Besides, he didn't absorb much just now. The Wind Lord shook his head slightly. You are too modest. The Wind Lord didn't ask anything, but looked at Han Fei and said, the sea-quaking wind bead is not fully formed yet. Throw it away and let it continue to absorb the great Tao of wind. Hearing this, Han Fei threw out the wind bead. At this moment, the Wind Lord said, this Shuizhan actually detonated his heavenly centipede staff. Unfortunately, this person is very strong. It seems that we can't stop him. Han Fei was panting at this moment. It would take a while for the poison in his body to be detoxified. The Snow Lady said, Shuizhan, the sea-quaking wind bead will be fully formed in about 6 hours. During these 6 hours, the wind demons in the violent hurricane will become stronger and stronger. In the end, a dozen half-king realm wind demons may be born. The only advantage is that they won't besiege you together. Can you stop them? The Snow Lady was actually explaining to Han Fei and telling him that it would be safe later. There were only a few half-king realm wind demons. The Wind Lord couldn't help but smile. My little friend Shuizhan, you've helped me a lot this time. Why don't you just take the sea-quaking wind bead for me? The Snow Lady shook her head slightly. I still need some experience. The Snow Lady looked at Han Fei. 6 hours later, once the sea-quaking wind bead is fully formed, the power of the violent hurricane will weaken, and the wind demons will no longer be born. Of course, in addition to the wind demons, there may be strong masters from other immortal palaces coming to compete for the wind bead. It's up to you. Before Han Fei spoke, the Wind Lord laughed. Fine, let the 100 demons or the sea humans fight for the sea-quaking wind bead. I, the Wind Slayer, don't want to join the fun. The Wind Lord slightly cupped his hands at the Snow Lady. Let's go. The battle is over. I'll take a look around and see if there are other people to save. The Snow Lady bowed slightly. After the Wind Lord left the eye of the storm, the Wind Lord shook his head slightly. A peak-level venerable? Do you think I'll believe you? This guy's body has already become a half-king realm cultivator. Bing Shuitian is really good. He really hid his strength well for the land of the fallen king. When only Han Fei and the Snow Lady were left in the eye of the storm, Han Fei said lightly, it's Chun Guangjia's plan. His target is the human heavenly talents. I've almost ruined the plan. But there should be a lot of human venerables in the wind field. I don't know the casualties. The Snow Lady nodded slightly. This is not the first time this kind of thing has happened, but it rarely succeeds. This time, there was an accident. I need to go and have a look too. With your strength, you only need to wait for a few hours. Han Fei couldn't help but ask. Well, there are only a dozen half-king realm wind demons. The Snow Lady said, it's extremely difficult for wind demons to grow to the half-king level by devouring each other. It's already rare for a dozen half-king realm wind demons to be born in a violent hurricane. You should have hunted a lot of wind demons. It's already a great opportunity for you to get at least 500 wisps of chaotic energy in this trip. Han Fei shrugged slightly and didn't stop the Snow Lady from leaving. Han Fei thought to himself, I've already got more than 1,000 wisps. If there are 7 or 8 more half-king realm wind demons, plus the chaotic energy contained in the wind bead, I can get about 500 wisps of chaotic energy. Thinking of this, Han Fei couldn't wait to have a violent hurricane every day. First update. Asking for votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 1738. Han Fei was the only one left in the entire Eye of the Storm. Here, it was not affected by the wind, and there was no wind at all. The old turtle said, in the wind field, many sea demons have retreated. I don't think many people will compete with you. Han Fei said leisurely, okay, then I'll wait for the wind demons. Half an hour later, Han Fei finally saw a half-king realm wind demon. This wind demon didn't even look at Han Fei and rushed to devour the wind bead. Hey, why is your mouth so big? Did I say I would give it to you? Wind was invisible, and the wind demon was just an invisible shadow. He could change his form, but who would have thought that he would turn into a big shark? At this moment, Han Fei turned into a golden giant and broke the wind demon's mouth. 2 hours. 2 hours. 3 hours. When Han Fei killed 8 half-king realm wind demons in a row, he scratched his head and said helplessly, why didn't anyone come to grab the wind bead? The old turtle said, as I said, most of the sea demons have retreated. That's not right. What about the small part? The old turtle said, the venerable is not a small shrimp. They're not stupid. Knowing that this place is full of danger, why would they come? Han Fei, the 100-demon clan, and the human tribe at the bottom of the sea had run away. The people of the wind/sky wouldn't come, and the people of the Bingshu sky probably wouldn't come either. In addition, the experts of the other mortal palaces nearby might have received the relevant notice, so no one would come again. Han Fei waited until the wind bead was formed and no longer absorbed the wind. Then he grabbed the wind bead and stuffed it in to forge the universe. After doing all this, as soon as Han Fei escaped into the wind field, he met a human expert who happened to be from the Wind Slasher sect, who was fighting an ordinary wind demon at this moment. When this person saw Han Fei, he was stunned for a moment and said, greetings, fellow Taoist Snowjean. Han Fei couldn't help but say coldly, why don't you go to the Eye of the Storm? The man said with a smile, I heard that fellow Taoist Snowjean is guarding the sea-shaking wind bead there. How dare I snatch it from fellow Taoist Snowjean? Han Fei thought to himself, F***CK, am I already so famous? What did the Wind Lords say to Windslayer's men? However, Han Fei didn't care anymore. He quickly left the violent hurricane. Apart from some scattered wind demons, there shouldn't be any other fortuitous opportunities here. The wind on the Great Path was rapidly weakening. It was estimated that this violent hurricane would disappear soon. How many did he kill in this battle? Han Fei had forgotten about it. After finding the old turtle and leaving the violent hurricane, Han Fei entered Forge the Universe. As soon as he entered Forge the Universe, Han Fei sat cross-legged and looked at his information. Owner, Han Fei level, 89, peak level venerable, vast sea tribe chart, 3460564 evolving, 7/3 for 21 days, chaotic energy, 2,383 strands mind power, 231061 range, 120,000 miles power, 23,908 waves, first spiritual pulse, unknown, second spiritual vein, unknown. First spiritual beast, twin yin-yang spirit swallowing fish, level 78. Second spiritual beast, king sparrow, level 76. Main art, void arrival, level 7 of void fishing, king level, divine quality. In addition to the surge of chaotic energy, Han Fei's soul power had also skyrocketed. The king sparrow had leveled up again in the past few days, almost catching up with Little Black and Little White. I really don't know how this guy grew up. Wasn't the speed a little too fast? Han Fei didn't swallow the sea-shaking wind pearl immediately, but looked at the gray misty space of the demon purification pot. Time chain, it's time to upgrade. Upgrade. Thousands of chaotic energy were extracted from Han Fei's body at once. The old turtle was speechless. Are you trading with the calabash again? Don't you want to open up the Origin Sea anymore? Han Fei couldn't help but say, don't panic. I still have more than 1,000 strands. The old turtle was exasperated. He felt that Han Fei was a spendthrift. He couldn't even have chaotic energy. As long as he had some capital, he had to exchange for something with the calabash. While the time chain was upgraded, Han Fei didn't stay idle. He took out all the sun moon shells he had hunted this time. Clatter, a large pile of sun moon shells fell to the ground, 57 in number. With a thought, Han Fei directly opened up a river-like ditch and forged the universe. Clatter, the ultra-quality spiritual stones were poured in like a river. After all the ultra-quality spiritual stones were poured in, Han Fei took a deep breath. Before he knew it, he had plundered 5.08 million ultra-quality spiritual stones. Yes, even Han Fei himself was shocked by this number. It was the first time in his life that he was so rich. After stuffing more than a dozen big pits in a row, Han Fei finally sorted out all these resources. 1 hour later, Han Fei counted again. Ultra-quality spiritual stones, 5.08 million. Ultra-quality divine weapons, 9,106. High-quality divine weapons, 1,024. Divine weapon level materials, 30657. Sea Quelling Bazaar, treasure level materials, 567. Elixirs, 286 bottles. Energy fruits, 24398. Other spiritual fruits, 18079. Messy treasure maps, 201. Various cultivation methods and combat skills, 403. In addition, there were some things that were not particularly many, but extremely precious. For example, earth vein spring water, demonic chi essence, and so on, in a small pile. When Han Fei completely sorted out these things, he narrowed his eyes. How can I use so many of them? The old turtle said, there don't seem to be many things that you can use. Han Fei asked, can I use them to expand the sea? The old turtle said, at least you can build thousands of shields for your tribulation. Maybe you can resist it all the way. Han Fei shook his head slightly. Forget it. Let's swallow this sea-shaking wind pearl first. Han Fei stretched out his hand, and the sea-shaking wind pearl flew to Han Fei's mouth. Han Fei swallowed it without hesitation. To be honest, Han Fei had too many things to eat now. In Han Fei's view, the 200 wisps of chaotic energy in this sea-shaking wind pearl were the most important. Yes, the formed sea-shaking wind pearl only provided 200 wisps of chaotic energy for Han Fei. When the sea-shaking wind pearl entered his mouth, Han Fei felt that a hurricane was blowing in his heart. A green light appeared in his eyes. At that moment, Han Fei seemed to be in the middle of a wind. However, Han Fei was like a kite, rising and falling in the wind. The power of the wind was sometimes fast and sometimes slow, sometimes sharp, sometimes soft, sometimes warm, and sometimes cold. And Han Fei, like a kite, was like a fallen leaf, flying and rolling in the wind. Gradually, Han Fei felt like he could control his leaf-like body. It was not until he could move and float freely in the wind that Han Fei felt the force of the wind weaken. It was not until the wind in his heart disappeared that Han Fei slowly woke up from his meditation. As soon as he woke up, Han Fei asked, Old Yuan, how long did I have an epiphany? The old turtle said, "You didn't have an epiphany. You just felt the Tao of wind. An hour has passed." Only an hour? He looked at the time chain and found that it hadn't been upgraded yet. Han Fei couldn't help but smile bitterly. He felt that he had done a lot of things. But now, only 2 hours had passed. Han Fei was still sitting cross-legged, but suddenly a gust of wind blew behind him. Immediately afterward, Han Fei flew up. Swish, Han Fei appeared outside Forge the Universe. He bent his fingers and flicked, and a wind blade swept out. The wind blade cut out the void in an irregular form, cutting out 100 meters and bringing out a large area of wind blades around it. In the end, a void crack was left. Han Fei tapped his feet lightly. An invisible wind condensed into a staircase for Han Fei to walk freely. Han Fei flew out tentatively, but he didn't seem very satisfied this time. Han Fei said, "You've mastered such a Tao, but your speed is only 10% faster?" The old turtle said, "Compared to your current strength, 10% is already very fast. Are you going to be faster than a king now?" Han Fei shrugged. "Maybe." Han Fei was not in a hurry to enter Forge the Universe. With a thought, the illusion of mountains and rivers appeared. The tree spirit, fire seed, water luster, earth 9, and punishing saber appeared. The 5 of them looked at each other and were slightly taken aback. They all said, "Master, what can I do for you?" Han Fei casually threw out the 5 elements he got from Tong 1. Han Fei said, "I got this by accident. Do you think it's useful?" The water spirit said, "Although I don't know what it is, this thing is very compatible with my origin. If I refine it, my strength should be quickly improved to the level of an advanced explorer or even a peak-level explorer." Earth 9 and the others also nodded. "We feel the same way. They seem to be very compatible with our origin." Han Fei glanced at the 5 elements in surprise. In fact, they were 5 floating crystals, and the tree spirit and the others were only intermediate explorers, still far from being peak-level explorers. Han Fei couldn't help but say, "Okay, then I'll let you refine it now. Wait a little longer, and I'll let you out." "Yes, master." When Han Fei entered Forge the Universe again, he suddenly felt that something was wrong. Immediately, Han Fei looked at the time chain, and a smile appeared on his face. 32 times second. Asking for votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 1739. The time acceleration was 32 times, and Han Fei was finally relieved. Originally, Han Fei had always felt that the time acceleration of 16 times was not enough. Now he could finally complete the bloodline devouring plan before he went to the inner domain. The next day, when Han Fei returned to the Snow God's Temple, he caused a lot of commotion as soon as he appeared. This time, no one dared to mess with him anymore. Someone said, "I heard that. Our Saint Child is very powerful. He killed a half-king in an instant." Someone sneered. "Why? It's said that he can even fight the captain of the Avengers to a draw." Someone was surprised. "Wait, isn't that different from what we heard? How come I heard that they didn't fight?" Someone said, "Alas, they would have fought if they hadn't been afraid of a surprise attack from a half-king." But Han Fei, the Avenger, didn't dare to take action, did he? Someone sighed. It said that Lord Saint Child hid his strength. His real strength is only at the half-king level. Someone exclaimed, "I knew it. He beat us peak-level venerables like chopping melons and vegetables. If he was really a peak-level venerable, how could he be so strong?" Someone else heaved a long sigh. "But he didn't use the means of a half-king. Forget it. The Saint Child must have come to the place where the king died. Otherwise, he would have to hide for a few more years." Han Fei wasn't interested in these remarks. Han Fei felt that as long as he went to the inner domain, he wouldn't return to the ice-snow world. After he returned to his residence, Han Fei saw Bing Xue Chuling waiting for him. Han Fei asked casually, "What's the matter?" Bing Xue Chuling said, "Thank you for saving my life, Celestial Master." Han Fei waved his hand casually and said, "It's fine. I just helped you. Are you here to thank me?" Bing Xue Chuling said, "Master Snow Lady said that the Avenger may not go out on the regular routes in the future. Recently, there have been many major events, and the 13 heavens of the outer domain have begun to strictly guard all the routes. Han Fei nodded slightly. Got it. I don't plan to take action again in a short time. Bing Xue Chuling heaved a sigh of relief. Who knew how many sea monsters had been killed by the Avenger when it appeared in the hurricane? Now, Han Fei's name was probably in the 100 Demons clan and the Martial Emperor city. Besides, Han Fei took Bo Yi away. In that case, he would most likely die without a doubt. In other words, he had offended all 13 heavens. If Han Fei's identity was exposed in the future, wouldn't he become the enemy of more than half of the 36 Xuantians? Bing Xue Chuling said, Immortal Master, have your entourage and the little girl been in the sea quelling painting the whole time? The Snow Maidens asked me to remind the Immortal Master that the sea quelling painting contains too little spiritual energy and Tao, which is not suitable for long-term residence. Of course, this is up to the Immortal Master himself. And then, all of a sudden, Han Fei's eyes widened. Wait, how do you know about the sea quelling painting? Could it be that there is more than one sea quelling painting? Bing Xue Chuling glanced at Han Fei in surprise. You don't know, Immortal Master? The sea quelling painting was originally an unparalleled painting, but it was divided into 36 parts at the beginning. Logically speaking, each family has a copy. It's a pity that the immortal palaces are divided into strong and weak ones, and our sea quelling painting eventually fell into the hands of several other families. Wow, Han Fei immediately took a breath. There were indeed 36 parts of the sea quelling painting. He had guessed that there was something wrong with the territory in the sea quelling painting. It didn't seem to be complete. Only today did he learn the inside story. However, the Life Queen never told him about this. Did the Life Queen not know about the sea quelling painting? Or did she deliberately not tell him? Han Fei thought, in the future, when I return to the Yin-Yang heaven, I have to talk to my junior sister. Our two families have been neighbors for so many years. Our relationship is better than that of the immortal palaces in the outer domain, right? Is it necessary to keep this a secret? Han Fei thought of something and immediately asked, Is there any strongest academy in the Bing Xue heaven? Bing Xue Chuling said, Of course there is. However, the Wind Snow Dao Academy was the best. Those who can enter the Wind Snow Academy are all heavenly talents. At least, it's difficult for those below level 7 to enter. With a thought from Han Fei, phantoms of mountains and rivers appeared around him, and Xiao Sei and Nian appeared. As soon as Nian saw Han Fei, she immediately said, Brother, is it safe outside? Han Fei smiled and said, Of course it's safe. Nian, let me send you to a fun place. Stay for half a year, okay? Han Fei sighed inwardly. Although he had promised the time dragon carp that he would take Nian to grow up, Nian was too weak now, and he might encounter danger at any time. He couldn't put her in the sea quelling painting all the time. Besides, the Snow Lady also said that although she could live in the sea quelling painting, it was not suitable for cultivation. Besides, Nian knew too little about the outside world, and even less about the ways of the world, so she had to go to a crowded place to adapt. Nian was overjoyed. Where's the fun place? Han Fei smiled leisurely. The school. Nian was going to enter the school, so Han Fei naturally had to give her a lot of instructions. Of course, the most appropriate plan was for Xiao Sei to follow behind to prevent any accidents. Half a day later, Han Fei told Xiao Sei and Nian, you can't use the time technique in the school. Not even once, understand? Nian nodded. Got it. Han Fei said with a smile, Of course, except for the time technique, you can learn any technique. Body refining techniques, combat skills, soul combat techniques, you can have a look at them all. Also, communicate with your classmates more often. But if someone bullies you, just beat him, just don't kill him. Han Fei rambled on and on. After all, she was still a child. In the end, Han Fei still looked at Xiao Sei worriedly and said, Don't try to change Nian cognition, nor try to subvert my theory. You just need to be an escort and watch over Nian. Once there is something you can't solve, you can come to me or the Virgin Spirit Saintess. Xiao Sei nodded. Yes, Master Han Fei. Han Fei said, "I am now the Holy Child." Xiao Sei nodded. "Yes, Master Holy Child." Han Fei wasn't worried about Nian Er's learning ability at all. After all, she was a time dragon carp. Her natural immortal heritage should be stronger than his. Therefore, whether it was learning techniques or various combat skills, her speed couldn't be slow. In addition, he directly gave Nian and Xiao Sei a lot of resources, which they could squander freely. Anyway, it was only half a year, so they shouldn't squander too much. In any case, children should always go to school, get in touch with the world, and communicate with others. This was growth. More than 4 months later, 12 years had passed in Forge the Universe. At this moment, Forge the Universe had a radius of 3,000 kilometers. This was all the space expanded by the impure spiritual energy left during Han Fei's cultivation. At this moment, on the Ice Lotus, Han Fei had completed more than half of the marrow refining of the pure mystic body. Compared with the indestructible tyrant body, this pure mystic body was much softer. Although it took a long time, it was after all a great technique ranked on the 10,000 races in the sea list. Therefore, the speed didn't slow down much. Forging the pure mystic body, Han Fei had reached a new bottleneck, only one step away from the Half-King realm. However, his bloodline devouring would be completed in 33 days. Han Fei thought, "I'd better wait a little longer. Otherwise, how embarrassing would it be if I dropped a realm right after breaking through to the Half-King realm?" In Forge the Universe, another month passed. On this day, Han Fei suddenly felt refreshed. The first thing he felt was that his body was instinctively devouring energy. Han Fei shouted, "Old Yuan, release a batch of energy for me." The old turtle didn't hesitate and quickly moved away. When a massive amount of energy filled Han Fei's body, which was about 5% of the total energy of the old turtle, Han Fei felt full. At this moment, Han Fei looked at the demon purification pod, and a message popped up. Owner, Han Fei, level greater than 89. Peak level venerable, 10,000 races in the sea, 2720986. Chaotic energy greater than 1,583 wisps. Spiritual power, 241862. Perception range greater than 140,000 kilometers. Power greater than 27,001 waves. First spiritual heritage, unknown. Second spiritual heritage, unknown. First spiritual beast, twin yin-yang spirit swallowing fish, level 78. Second spiritual beast, king sparrow, level 76. Main art, void arrival, level 7 of void fishing, king level, divine quality, seeing. This message, Han Fei seemed to have expected it and wasn't very surprised. The 10,000 races in the sea had increased by about 740,000. His spiritual power had increased by more than 10,000 points because of the upgrade of his bloodline level. This was also thanks to the Taoist patterns he had visualized. His perception range had increased by 20,000 kilometers because of the upgrade of his bloodline. As for his strength, because Han Fei was now at the limit of the peak level venerable. Originally, his strength had been stuck at 26,999 waves when he was in seclusion for 2 months. However, because of the upgrade of his bloodline, this bottleneck was broken again. This meant that if Han Fei wanted to break through to the Demi-King level, he had to continue cultivating. Han Fei's current strength had already surpassed the strength of the old turtle when he was going through the heavenly tribulation. When Han Fei looked at the bloodline information again, he couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Sure enough, as he expected, he couldn't devour anymore. 10,000 races in the sea, 2962022, Threed, owner, 2720986, nearby bloodlines, ancient azure dragon, golden crow divine blood, time dragon carp, twin yin-yang spirit swallowing fish. Recommended bloodlines, none at this point. Han Fei knew that in the venerable realm, his bloodline level was probably already extremely high. This could be felt from the speed of his cultivation. Since the demon purification pot didn't recommend it, if he forcibly devoured it, the consequences would be unpredictable. In this case, his bloodline in the venerable realm would be fine for now. When he became a venerable, the upgrade of his life level might also be extraordinary. Third, asking for votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 1740. After another breakthrough, Han Fei continued to cultivate the pure mystic body and made rapid progress. Previously, it took him 2 months to reach the bottleneck. Now that his life level was further improved, his cultivation speed was even faster. In just 10 days, his power had exceeded 28,000 waves. This speed was amazing. On this day, Han Fei was cultivating. Suddenly, the old turtle said, Bing Shua Chuling is here. It's time to set off. Okay. Swish, Bing Shua Chuling was about to call out when the barrier of Han Fei's ice and snow courtyard was opened. Seeing Han Fei in a white cloak and an ice mask, Bing Shua Chuling didn't know if she was hallucinating. She actually dared to feel the pressure of a bloodline level. The man in front of her seemed to be born nobler than her. She even had the urge to be subdued. Seeing Bing Shua Chuling stunned, Han Fei asked, Are we leaving? Bing Shua Chuling came back to herself. Yes, the families of the 13 outer heavens have gathered. Master Snow Lady will lead the team in person. They will set off tomorrow. Han Fei was surprised. The kings will lead the team? No one will guard the divine palace. Bing Shua Chuling said, Not all the kings of the outer heavens will go on this trip. 7 kings will stay in the 13 outer heavens. The ice and snow heavens have a good relationship with the wind slayer heavens, so the Wind Lord will stay in the outer heavens. Besides, the divine palace will activate the array of the divine palace. Before Master comes back, the ice and snow heavens will reduce sea exploration activities as much as possible. And, Bing Shua Chuling sighed slightly. Also, apart from us, the 100 demons, the sea humans, and the mermaids will all go there. After all, the kings of the 36 divine palaces are not the only ones who died in the king grave. There are also sea demons and even giant beasts. Han Fei thought to himself. So, in addition to the various geniuses of the 36 mysterious heavens and the danger of the king perished, there's also the threat of sea demons? Bing Shua Chuling nodded. The king grave opens once every 100 years. All the heavenly talents in the chaotic ocean will go there. That's why Master can leave the ice and snow heavens. Secretly delighted, Han Fei couldn't help but lick his lips. Interesting. Kings can't enter. Are you sure kings can't sneak in? Bing Shua Chuling glanced at Han Fei in surprise, feeling that he seemed very excited. Bing Shua Chuling said, Theoretically, we can. However, the various monarchs were restraining each other, only allowing exalted realm experts to seek fortuitous encounters within. After all, the strongest person that died in the king-perished land was only a king. Although there might be some treasures there, it would be of limited use to the various monarchs. However, it's different for venerable ones. Han Fei nodded. That's good. Bing Shua seemed to realize something. Han Fei was the current immortal master of the Yin-Yang heaven. Was there a big difference between such a character and a king? In a violent hurricane last time, even Han Fei's clone could easily strangle a half-king real powerhouse. If Han Fei really went to the place where the king perished, who could be his opponent? Suddenly, Bing Shua realized something. Why did the Snow Lady keep Han Fei here for half a year? Was it really to protect Han Fei? Or did she want to borrow Han Fei's strength? But in any case, the Snow Lady kept Han Fei here and even helped Han Fei go to the place where the king perished, which was a big gift. After hearing Bing Shua Chuling's explanation, Han Fei realized something. Han Fei said, Han Fei, owe you a favor. I will protect the people of the Snow God's Temple this time. If there is a chance, I will certainly help you. Snow Wind Academy. Nian, I have been studying here for half a year. When she first came, she really shocked a lot of people. Those who could enter the Snow Wind Academy were all heavenly talents. But when had they ever seen a peak-level law enforcer at the age of 7 or 8? Nian was small, but her strength was not bad at all. More importantly, she was cute and liked to eat. The other students would rarely bully her. Although Nian's strength was high, her classes were with the latest batch of disciples. Among those disciples, some are only great fishing masters, but they were also amazingly talented. Many of these people were about the same age as Nien, but their strength was world apart. At first, they didn't dare to talk to Nien, but later they found that Nien was well-behaved and sensible, reading books, eating, and twisting the Rubik's Cube when she was free. Twisting the Rubik's Cube became the first step for Nien to socialize, which attracted a lot of attention. Under Nien-er's diligent education, she soon became good friends with a group of half-grown children. Xiaosei was naturally happy to see such a scene. Ever since he first met Nien, he had never seen her smile so cheerfully. However, when she walked out of the abyssal chasm with Han Fei, she was happy almost every day. Even in the sea-quelling painting, there were so many small animals playing with her, and she was also happy. 5 months later, Nien was no longer the little girl who knew nothing. At least, she knew the structure of this ice and snow world. She knew the difference between villages, towns, and main cities. She also cultivated and went shopping with her friends. She even secretly ran to the village with another little girl. The reason was that when the little girl heard that her parents were bullied, Nien stood up for her. She followed her to the village and almost slapped the whole family out of existence. The family was so scared that they knelt on the ground and begged for mercy on the spot. Later, when they returned to the Wind Snow Dao Academy, Nien naturally had to be punished with them, which made the teacher so angry that his beard flew up. The two of them were taught a good lesson. These were just small interludes in the story. This was the nature of children. Back then, Han Fei wasn't much better than Nien. In fact, he was even worse. After all, when Han Fei first came here, this world was completely new to him and had too many attractions. On this day, Nien was not cultivating because she didn't need to cultivate at all now. Other people cultivated cultivation methods, while she only cultivated combat skills. Near noon, Nien dragged a little girl who was about the same age as her, and the two of them set up a grill in the house. Nien said, "Little Tan, let's have barbecue at noon." Little Tan was still a little hesitant. Nien, last time we had barbecue, we were caught by the teacher and were punished to cultivate in seclusion for 3 days. Are you sure it's okay this time? Nien giggled. It's okay. I went to the academy to find a few books on arrays. Look, Nien took out an ultra-quality spiritual stone, controlled the spiritual energy around the room with the means of spirit gatherer, and set up a crooked concealment array. Seeing this scene, Han Fei couldn't help but be speechless. Han Fei looked at Xiaosei and asked, "Who introduced this spirit gatherer to her?" Xiaosei looked embarrassed. "Little Master came to ask me, so I let her attend a few spirit gatherer classes." Han Fei was speechless. "You are also a venerable. Nien is so talented, but you taught her to be like this? Is this a concealment array?" She just used spiritual energy to build an array. Now, this array has been set up, but her room is full of spiritual energy. She just wants to tell the whole school that she barbecued here. Puff, Bing Xue Chilian couldn't help laughing. She thought to herself, your baby sister has made a lot of jokes at school. Last time, she made a hot pot. There was water in the pot, a fire was lit below, and the fish was swimming in the pot. She said the fish was not cooked. A lot of people burst into laughter. Sure enough, not long after Nien set up this concealment array, a white-bearded teacher shouted, "Han Nien, come out. Do you think your family is rich?" In broad daylight, there is a spiritual energy light shield above your head. What? Do you think you are not bright enough? In the room, little Tan sighed. Sure enough, I've been discovered again. And Nien suddenly got up, quickly put away the barbecue grill, and said, "Run, everyone." Han Fei finally couldn't stand it anymore. With a swish, he closed the concealment array, inhaled the spiritual energy into his body, and appeared in front of the house. Nien had just come out. When she saw Han Fei, she was shocked. Brother? Beautiful sister. Nien had seen Han Fei wearing a mask, so she knew it was Han Fei. As soon as she turned her head, she saw an old man who was an advanced explorer rushing over angrily. However, when the old man saw Bing Xue Chilian and a masked Han Fei, he was immediately shocked. He immediately sucked in a breath of cold air. The old man immediately bowed and said, "Greetings, Your Excellency, holy girl, and Your Excellency, holy child." The old man was shocked. Why are these two here? When the old man looked at Nien again, thinking of Nien-Er's terrifying talent, he immediately took a breath of cold air. Is it possible that Your Excellency, holy child and holy girl, are already married and pregnant with a daughter? This discovery made Old Man Ming Du's heart tremble. This kind of thing must be kept secret. If this was revealed, God knew how much trouble it would cause. Han Fei said, "My younger sister is not very sensible. Thank you for taking care of her in the past 6 months." Younger sister? Younger sister? Mingdu secretly breathed a sigh of relief, thinking, is it really as simple as a younger sister? However, he still bowed and said, "Thank you, Your Excellency, holy child. Nien-Er's talent is really amazing. She can make a breakthrough and transcend her tribulation at any time. I'm so proud to have such a talent in the ice and snow heaven." Han Fei said lightly, "Sir, I'm taking Nien-Er with me today." Huh? The old man thought to himself, Nien has only been here for a year. Although Nien doesn't know many things, she is very popular with the teachers. Why are you leaving now? Bing Xueqiling also said in surprise, "Are you taking Nien-Er with you?" Han Fei said, "Yes." When Nien-Er heard that she was leaving, she was a little reluctant. "Brother, are you leaving so soon?" Nien-Er has just made friends. Han Fei smiled gently. "Nien-Er, if there's a chance in the future, we will come back." Nien-Er couldn't help looking at her little friend. Although she was reluctant, if Han Fei was leaving, she had to go too. Nien-Er thought for a long time, took out her barbecue grill, and threw it on the ground. "Little Tan, I'm leaving. When you are hungry, use it for barbecue." Chapter 1741. If Han Fei left the snow god's temple, he would not leave Nien-Er behind. For Han Fei, the road ahead might be different every day. Who knew what would happen? Furthermore, even though the Snow Lady had expressed her friendliness towards him, their relationship hadn't reached the point of trust yet. The Snow Lady was willing to help him for her own reasons. What Han Fei had to do was to accept the exchange of interests calmly. The next day, the Snow Maidens left the Celestial Palace with 22 Grand Monarchs, the Holy Child, and the Holy Daughter. A total of 24 powerful beings boarded the ship and headed for the inner realms. Among the 24 people, only one was a peak advanced venerable one. Among the rest, except for Han Fei and Bing Xueqiling, who were acknowledged to have reached the Half-King realm, there were only 2 other Half-King realm experts. The reason why there were very few Half-Monarch realm experts going was because once they reached the Half-Monarch realm, they would only think about transcending the tribulation. If one was lucky, one could indeed obtain many fortuitous opportunities in the land where the king perished. However, to directly obtain the opportunity to become a king, the king's grave was not enough. Most of the half-king realm powerhouses were waiting for the opening of another super-secret realm. That was the place where they dreamed of becoming kings. Therefore, the group of people sent by the Snow God Palace could be said to be extremely strong. Han Fei was amazed. If the 36 mysterious heavens all brought out such a lineup, then there would be at least more than 600 peak-level venerables participating in the battle of the King Grave. And this was only the human side. How many people from the Hunter Demon tribe, the Sea Humans, the Merfolk tribe, and even the Giant tribe would participate? In this way, there seemed to be over 2,000 Exalt Realm experts participating in the King Perished. Han Fei had fought many battles himself, but how many peak-level venerables would die in this battle? How could these kings be willing to part with their treasures? Han Fei was standing at the bow of the ship with his hands behind his back, giving everyone the impression that he was extremely powerful. Hearing the voice behind him, Han Fei didn't look back, but said lightly, "What's the casualty rate in the place where the king died?" Bing Xueqiling replied, "Usually around 30%. Han Fei narrowed his eyes slightly. Even 30% is already a lot. This meant that in this battle, nearly 1/3 of the powerhouses would fall. The price he had to pay was huge, but to become a king, it might not be enough. The land of King Perished could only be said to be a place where one could become a king. Perhaps those who were fated would be able to obtain it. Even if there was a great opportunity there, it would probably be extremely difficult to obtain. However, since even a half-martial monarch expert went there, it meant that there should be fortuitous encounters for half-martial monarchs to fight for in this place. Bingshu Chu Ling said, "Teacher is calling for you." Han Fei smiled. Sure enough, he knew it wouldn't be so simple. The ship Han Fei took was named the Snow God, which was named after the Immortal Palace. This also proved that this was the carriage of a king. The ship was made entirely from the bones of a half-monarch realm cultivator. There were even traces of King Great Bones in many places. Based on the arrangement of this ship, it was probably the ship with the strongest ice and snow penetration. It was more than 200 meters long and had 3 levels. The Snow Maidens resided on the highest level, and it was like a miniature palace of ice and snow. When Han Fei entered the door, the Snow Maidens were reading a thick book covered with frost. Seeing Han Fei come in, she said lightly, "You should have guessed. The land of King Perished seems to be a little different." Han Fei went straight to the table and nodded slightly. If it's just to become a half-martial monarch, then it's meaningless for half-martial monarchs to go there. The Snow Maidens looked at Han Fei and asked, "How much do you know about what happened back then?" Han Fei asked, "Are you talking about the secret realm you once went to?" Seeing the Snow Maidens nod, Han Fei said, "Basically nothing. I only know that it was an obstacle on your eastbound route. The things there made you willing to stay there and fight for them." The Snow Maidens smiled lightly. "It seems that you do know very little. Half-martial monarchs go to the land of King Perished, not to fight randomly. The half-martial monarchs who were chosen to go to the land of King Perished only to get one thing." Han Fei's pupils constricted slightly. "What?" The Snow Maidens said, "The key to the Imperial Palace." Han Fei's eyelids twitched. "The Imperial Palace?" The Snow Maidens pushed the thick snow book in front of her to Han Fei. Han Fei didn't ask much, but turned the book over and glanced at it. After a while, even his breathing became slightly rapid. Because the Snow Maidens were here, the old turtle didn't say a word. But even if the old turtle didn't say it, Han Fei knew that this secret was a bit big. It turned out that after Old Han and the others, the 36 Black Heavens had experienced more than one treasure hunting trip. In the end, they confirmed that the place was an imperial palace. Yes, if Han Fei didn't know what an emperor was, he did. An emperor, one step higher than that, would become a god. The martial emperor city could stand proudly in the chaotic ocean for so many years just because of the legend of the emperor. In that true emperor palace, there was the inheritance of the emperor monarch. It was no wonder that these people would rather stay in this small place and not advance than leave this place. This Snow book recorded that it was actually not difficult to enter the imperial palace. If there were tokens of the imperial palace, their safety would be greatly improved. The more tokens, the better the quality, and the safer they would be when they went to the imperial palace in the future. And the place where the kings died, for ordinary people, was an opportunity to become half-king. However, for half-king, it was an opportunity to explore the imperial palace. And exploring the imperial palace represented an opportunity to become a king. The Snow Maiden said, "According to the part of the imperial palace that we have explored so far, it should be less than 30% of the entire imperial palace. The more we explore," Han Fei whispered, "less than 30% has created hundreds of kings." The Snow Maiden said indifferently, "Yes, this is what we know, but I don't know how many kings it has created. You should know that we are all old. The level of human bloodline and the internal injuries left by the king's scuffles will actually shorten our lifespan. Therefore, we won't act rashly. However, before we perish, we still have to explore that place." Han Fei narrowed his eyes and said, "What about reincarnation or possession?" The Snow Maiden said, "You should know that if you want to cultivate reincarnation, you should try not to let your memories awaken. Otherwise, it will be difficult to walk the path of cultivation. Besides, to cultivate reincarnation, you have to divide your fate. If you do it too many times, will the reincarnation be yours, or are you the reincarnation? It's hard to say. As for possession, you can live another life at most. And before that, many of the kings had already possessed bodies when they were still in the venerable realm. It's the same for humans and sea demons. No one is better than anyone else. Han Fei said leisurely. So, now you want to keep sending people to explore the imperial palace and cultivate new kings. The Snow Maidens said, you just came out of the wilderness, so there are some things you don't know. Do you know why the chaotic ocean is divided into the inner and outer heavens? Han Fei wondered why. The Snow Maidens said, because each of the inner heavens has more than one king. Huh? Han Fei's body trembled. More than one king? Does this mean that there are at least 26 kings in the inner heavens? The Snow Maidens said, every 100 years, the land of the king grave will open. Every 3,000 years, the imperial palace will be explored. Why does it take such a long time? Even the venerables of the major immortal palaces will die. If the casualty rate in the land of the king grave is about 30%, then the probability of death in the imperial palace is as high as 80%. Besides, the exploration of the imperial palace will only become more and more difficult. This means that it will be more and more difficult to become a king in the imperial palace. Han Fei was silent for a moment and asked, how long until the imperial palace opens? The Snow Maiden said leisurely, 32 years. Han Fei chuckled. Don't tell me. You have to go on this trip too? The Snow Maidens shook her head slightly. We won't go on this trip, but I'm not sure about the next one. Han Fei asked, so, I may be the strongest person on this trip? The Snow Maidens nodded. Yes, that's why I want to help you. Han Fei was silent for a moment and said, what if I transcend the tribulation and become a king in these 32 years? The Snow Maidens paused for a moment. Then, maybe you won't be able to go either. Han Fei sneered in his heart. You won't be able to go as a king? It means that I'm afraid that you will find a greater opportunity. However, if the imperial palace opens, wouldn't I be stupid if I didn't go? The chances of survival in the imperial palace are slim, but I'm not a salted fish or cabbage. There were 32 years left before the opening of the Arch Palace. His current bloodline level was already so high, and he had accumulated so many resources. If he were to try again later, he might not have a 95% success rate, but he should have a 94% success rate, no matter how he looked at it. He couldn't wait for more than 30 years to become a king. Han Fei thought to himself, maybe for the Snow Maidens, 32 years is enough for me to grow a little or resist the tribulation. However, to him, these 32 years were equivalent to 1,000 years of time. How can I waste my time? Han Fei immediately said, in any case, I will protect the people of the Snow God's temple in the place where the king died this time. But if I compete with other half-kings for treasures, I won't be able to help them. The Snow Maidens said straightforwardly, the 24 people who will go this time will rely on their efforts. With your help, it shouldn't be a problem to get 20 keys to the Imperial Palace. The so-called keys are actually objects with the aura of the Imperial Palace. If you see them, you will recognize them at a glance. Han Fei thought, it's just 20 tokens. I can rob them, even if I have to. It's not a big deal. So Han Fei nodded. Okay, I'll do it. As for the opening of the Imperial Palace in 32 years, it's too early now. I didn't come out of the wilderness to participate in the exploration of the secret realm of the Imperial Palace. The Snow Maidens nodded. That's fine. Let's talk about the future. Let's settle the matter in front of us for now. Chapter 1742. Han Fei quite appreciated the Snow Girl's bet this time. For the Snow Girl, she just did a small thing, but she did Han Fei a big favor. The Snow Girl's purpose was simple. This trip to the land of the King Grave was nothing more than to fight for more places for the Snow God's temple to go to the Imperial Palace. However, for Han Fei, the places had already been reserved. Not only had the places been reserved, but this trip to the land of the King Grave was also a hunt. He upgraded the time chain with 1,000 wisps of chaotic energy, and now he only had 1,000 wisps of chaotic energy left. Although 1,000 wisps were a lot, it was definitely not a lot for a heavenly talent who had become a king. After all, a half-king that Han Fei met could hide hundreds of wisps in his body. If they were to fight, he wouldn't have much chaotic energy left. Han Fei thought to himself, I can't be restricted by the chaotic energy when I expand my origin sea. Not long after Han Fei and the Snow Girl secretly discussed, the Snow God teleported and seemed to appear on a wide route. Han Fei didn't continue his seclusion at this moment. 8 big ships suddenly appeared in his field of vision. Judging from the shape and sails of these big ships, they didn't come from the same place. They must be the ships of the immortal palaces of the 13 outer heavens heading to the inner area. These big ships dropped the anchor and seemed to be waiting for all the big ships of the 13 outer heavens to gather. Swish, 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 the moment the Snow God appeared, 3 or 4 senses swept over. Those who were able to use their senses in front of the Snow Maidens were undoubtedly all King Tiers. There was a man in a red robe whose blood seemed to be dissipating. This man's voice was very low. "Snow Girl, how have you been?" Seeing that Han Fei was dumbfounded, Bing Xue Chuling said, "This is Palace Master Yin One of the Blood Evil Heaven. He is relatively powerful among the 13 outer heavens." On the other side, a man carrying a sledgehammer nodded at the Snow Girl. "Since you're here, Ling Feng won't come, right?" The Snow Girl nodded. "After all, he's fast. But if something happens, he will take care of it. There shouldn't be any delay." Han Fei thought to himself, "This must be the Lord of Thunder and Fire. His style is so obvious that I can't be wrong." Bing Xue Chuling said, "You should know him. He's the Lord of Lightning Fire, Lei Qing." The weapon on his body was the strongest weapon of the 13 heavens, the heaven-shaking thunder hammer. It was said that this hammer was the only weapon in the 36 profound heavens that could touch the threshold of a divine weapon. But as for the specifics, I've only heard it from others. Only the Lord of Lightning and Fire himself should know. Han Fei frowned. A weapon that touched the threshold of a divine weapon? That hammer must be extraordinary, as expected of the immortal palace whose main business was refining. Suddenly, Han Fei felt a gaze. Following the gaze, he saw a red-haired middle-aged man. This person's eyes were cold and unfriendly, and his face was cold and stern as he stared at Han Fei. Since they were on their own ship, Bing Xue Chuling was not afraid that other kings would eavesdrop on them. She continued, "This is the palace master of the Avalon of 5 elements. His name is Gong Zhan, and his innate spiritual beast is a 5-elemental dragonfish. Although the 2 5-element wheels were mid-grade sea-quelling bizarre treasures, they were battle weapons. The Avalon of 5 elements has always been belligerent." Gong Zhan looked at Han Fei. "Snow Girl, this must be your new disciple, Shuizhan, right? Judging from his demeanor, it seems that he's the king of your snow god's palace?" At this moment, Han Fei was standing at the bow of the ship with his hands behind his back and an ice mask on his face. He indeed didn't look like an ordinary person. Snow Girl said, "Shuizhan has always been like this. Or rather, the people of the snow and ice heaven have always been like this. It's not the first time you've heard this." Gong Zhan chuckled. "Of course I know. People of the snow and ice heaven are indifferent. It's said that on that day in the violent hurricane, my disciple asked for your Shuizhan's help, but he was turned down and sent to the Avenger, Han Fei. What clean cut." Han Fei couldn't help but look up at Gong Zhan without speaking. This kind of person just liked to pick a fight. If it were in the past, Han Fei would have yelled at him for 300 rounds. However, he was now Shuizhan, an extremely indifferent person. So a war of words? That was obviously not suitable for him. However, he could still throw a disdainful look at Gong Zhan. Because Han Fei's mask was very close to his face, his eyes could also convey his thoughts. When Han Fei glanced at him, Gong Zhan's face changed slightly. Behind Gong Zhan, someone looked even more awful and shouted, "Holy Child Shuizhan, how dare you disrespect the king? Do you want to spar with me?" Han Fei was indifferent, but he also retorted, "You don't deserve it." The venerables of the Avalon of 5 elements were furious. Even Gong Zhan was confused. How inflated was the soul ball's heart? My disciple doesn't deserve it? Who do you think you are? Han Fei thought to himself. Snow Girl said, "This is not a war. Just bear with it. Who can be your match in the land of King Death?" However, at this moment, with a buzz, a large ship full of spiritual plants broke through the void and arrived. As soon as the ship appeared, a pleasant voice said, "We're all from the 13 outer heavens. You're weaker than us. Why are you fighting with each other?" In the next moment, a flower fairy-like character appeared from a pile of flowers. She was wearing a light green dress made of intertwined flower stems. A small jade vine was wrapped around one of her arms. That was nothing. In terms of beauty, this woman was even more beautiful than the Snow Girl and could compete with the Life Queen. However, the Life Queen was indifferent. The one from the 100 Flowers Palace was a bit more enchanting. Bing Shui Chuling said, "This is the master of the 100 Flowers Palace, Hua Qianwei. Her spiritual plant is the misty beauty beard, and her weapon is the jade fairy vine. The master of the 100 Flowers Palace is among the top 5 in the 13 outer heavens." Han Fei didn't shy away and still looked at him indifferently. Han Fei had seen a lot of beautiful women, so he was not attracted by the master of the 100 Flowers Palace. He just looked at her. Hua Qianwei glanced at Han Fei and chuckled. "Sister Snow Girl, I heard that you accepted a new disciple. He should be very talented, but I'm afraid he's a bit dull." The Snow Girl bowed slightly. "I'm sorry, Sister Qianwei." Hua Qianwei had only just appeared to greet everyone when she saw another 3 ships breaking through the void and approaching. On one of the big ships, an old man in a black robe, holding a withered wooden staff, smiled. "Sorry to keep you waiting. I went to the god refining heaven by the way. Su Lian was supposed to come, but Su Lian often cultivates in seclusion, so I did it for him. Since everyone is here, it seems that it's time to go." Han Fei was lost for words. The other kings all looked like young girls, but why did the unique one look like an old man? Bing Shui Chuling said, "This is Master Huang Jie of the 10,000 Poison Heaven, known as the Myriad Poison Ancestor. His spiritual beast is the 7 ultimate ancient insect, which is known as the most poisonous in the 36 heavens. His sea-quelling bizarre treasure, the Myriad Poison Staff, is said to contain 100,000 kinds of poisons." Han Fei thought, "I can see that. This old man's face is not normal at all. I feel that he's going to poison me to death." Suddenly, Bing Shui Chuling said, "The 10,000 Poison Heaven and the Medicine King Heaven have always been at odds. The fight between the 2 families was not something that happened in a day or two. The 10,000 Poison Heaven should have been able to enter the inner domain, but because some kings died, they didn't go. They are one of the 13 heavens in the outer realms that should not be provoked." Han Fei felt a headache. Every restaurant had its own specialties. Needless to say, this old man must have a lot of poisons. During the seclusion in the Snow God's temple, because of the pure mystic body, he had reached a bottleneck in the peak level of the venerable realm, and his bloodline level hadn't made a breakthrough yet. At that time, Han Fei ate all kinds of poisonous flowers and plants. Han Fei knew very well that those who played with poisons were a group of terrifying guys. Ever since he was young, he had been fighting against poison and had never stopped. During the seclusion in the Snow God's temple, he swallowed more than 3,000 poisonous flowers, plants, and fruits. Now, seeing this old man from the 10,000 Poison Heaven, Han Fei wondered how he could get some poisons from there. Perhaps Han Fei's eyes fell on Huang Jie's eyes. Huang Jie was also surprised. "Why does this kid keep looking at me?" So Huang Jie said, "I heard that you recruited a saint child, Snow Lady. It must be him." The next moment, Han Fei spoke for the first time. "I'm Shui Zhan. Nice to meet you, Palace Master Huang Jie." Huh. Huang Jie was stunned for a moment. He had always been a weirdo in the eyes of others. Over here, there was clearly an air of hostility. Could it be that everyone was saluting in this snow battle? Huang Jie didn't think too much, but nodded slightly to show that he had. At this point, all the big ships of the outer domain had arrived. Among them, the 100 Flowers Palace, the 10,000 Poison Heaven, the Snow God's Temple, the 5 Elements Heaven, the Thunder Fire Heaven, and the Blood Evil Heaven were all led by kings. The conflict between Han Fei and the 5 Elements was also interrupted by the arrival of the 100 Flowers Palace and the 10,000 Poison Heaven. Only then did everyone stop arguing and set off. because there were 6 kings on the ship, and the ship was filled with experts. Even high-rank exalted realm experts were rare. Therefore, it was almost impossible for pirates to attack them on the route they took. In fact, to put it bluntly, even if all 10 pirate crews would come, the experts here would still be able to put up a fight. Han Fei inquired about it, and found that it would take about 25 days to get to the inner domain. During such a long time, of course, he couldn't lie on the side of the ship and watch the water every day, so Han Fei sealed a separate room in the cabin and went to forge the universe to cultivate. Half a month later, when Han Fei was feeling the pleasure brought by the growth of his strength, he suddenly heard the old turtle say, "We've arrived at the mist sea outside. This should be the land of chaos that isolates the inner and outer seas." Oh! Chapter 1743. Han Fei wanted to see how the inner and outer waters of the chaotic Azure Sea were divided. When he came out of the cabin and came to the deck, he found that it was so dark that he couldn't even see his own fingers. Outside the ship, chaotic and mottled spiritual energy was raging. It was comparable to the environment in a cage, or even worse. The illusions here were not only violent, but the fog particles seemed to be quite heavy. They were called fog because they appear like fog. But in fact, if one looked carefully, it was not all fog. Some were gravel, some were water droplets, and some were the residue of crushed seaweed. Why were they floating in the air? Also, there was a very intuitive phenomenon here. The gravity here was more than 10 times heavier than the outside world. Under such gravity, would there be such a phenomenon of floating? Han Fei scanned with his perception and found that his perception range was only about 1,200 kilometers. Any further, and he couldn't go further. Han Fei asked in surprise, "The perception range is only 1%. The old turtle said, "The space here is better." In other words, the space here is stronger. In other places, you can cut a crack in a void with a knife, but not here. You need to use 10 times the strength to be able to crack the void. The higher the space, the stronger the power of the Great Path. The power of the Great Path suppresses your perception, so you feel that your perception range is extremely small. Han Fei was puzzled. "You mean that the space here is much stronger than where we are usually?" The old turtle said, "That's obvious. This kind of powerful space power is several times stronger than the space in the Age of Gods. It can be seen that this is definitely an ancient land." "An ancient land?" The old turtle said, "The stronger the power of the Great Path contained in a world, the more stable this space is. If you're in the outside world, you can cut 10,000 kilometers with a knife. Then, in this stable space, you can only cut 1,000 kilometers. It's not that your strength has become weaker, but the strength of this space has become stronger. Although I don't know what's in this fog, I don't think it's very simple." Han Fei shook his head slightly and said, "So many kings haven't found out the reason after tens of thousands of years. Even if I have a navigator, I don't have time to find out the mystery. Besides, didn't you say that this place is extremely dangerous?" The old turtle said, "That's true. The creatures that could survive here, regardless of their cultivation level, at the very least, their physiques should not be weak. After all, the spatial structure here was dozens of times stronger than other places. If you cultivate here for a long time, you will be able to temper your physique." Han Fei chatted with the old turtle for a while and found that someone was fishing. At this moment, the man raised the hook and a big fish came out of the water. Since he had never seen this kind of fish before, he strolled over to have a look. Seeing Han Fei coming out, someone immediately saluted and said, "Greetings, Lord Holy Child." Han Fei nodded slightly. "Please continue." And in Han Fei's eyes, information emerged. Name: levitating fish. Introduction: a rare fish species that lives in places with a lot of levitating stones. This fish enters the sea during the day and floats in the air at night to absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. The levitating fish were proficient in spatial power, and they were able to tear through space or create spatial blades to attack their opponents. The levitating fish stone was born in the sky and had the ability to fly. Level 79, quality: rare, spiritual energy greater than 89,658 points, edible effect. Long-term consumption can increase one's chi and blood and increase one's explosive power. Collectible levitating stone, absorbable levitating stone. Han Fei was slightly taken aback. This fish could grow levitating stones? That was a bit strange. After walking around, Han Fei took out his fishing rod and caught a levitating fish. The knife light cut through the fish's head and cut out a levitating stone. Han Fei knew what a levitating stone was. It was a delicate jade-like stone dug out of a fish's head. Generally speaking, it was shaped like a heart and was as hard as a stone after it dried up. It was sparkling and translucent like jade. However, it was the first time that Han Fei had seen a levitating stone. This stone was enough to serve as a levitating stone for several fishing boats. Han Fei injected spiritual energy into it. In an instant, the levitating stone was filled, and its conductivity was more than 10 times that of ordinary levitating stones. Wow, Han Fei couldn't help but gasp. Is the conductivity so high? Doesn't it mean that the speed of the wind god boat can be increased by more than 10 times? Of course, with the speed of the wind god boat, even if it was 10 times faster, it could only travel more than 600,000 kilometers a day. Even if it was engraved with various arrays, it could only travel about 800,000 kilometers a day. Naturally, such a speed wasn't attractive to exalted realm experts at all. If it was only for explorers or below, this levitating stone would be very valuable. Unfortunately, since this kind of fish was a rare species, it could not be found all over the sea. Thinking about it, it could only be found in this foggy sea. Han Fei put away the levitating stone. As for this fish, when he was free, he would have a hot pot for it. Just when Han Fei was about to go back to seclusion, he perceived that on the big ship of the 10,000 Poison Heaven, a group of people were refining poison openly. Han Fei was fascinated, because the poisonous smoke produced by the poison was quite strong. So, they simply refined it outside. The dark green poison made Han Fei want to go up and have a taste, but he felt his blood freeze. Perhaps because Han Fei was in a trance, he was seen by Huang Jie from the 10,000 Poison Heaven. Huang Jie said, "Little friend Shuizhan, are you interested in refining poison?" Hearing this, Han Fei immediately came back to his senses and bowed slightly. "I don't know much about pharmacology, but I once ate a spiritual insect by mistake, and since then I have some resistance to poison." "Oh, you can resist any poison?" Han Fei thought to himself, the heaven spirit detoxifying insect may be precious, but it shouldn't be so precious. Others may be afraid of poison, but Han Fei wasn't. If he could ask old Huang Jie for some poison as a holy child, it would be a good idea. Han Fei nodded slightly and said, "I think so." Huang Jie was a little surprised. In a chaotic ocean, there are only 3 kinds of things that can resist any poison. One is the 1,000 poison lotus seed. One is the 9 poison treasure silkworm, and the other is the heaven spirit detoxifying insect. Since you ate the spiritual insect, is it colorful? Han Fei was surprised that this old man immediately mentioned the name of the heaven spirit detoxifying insect. Immediately, Han Fei said, "It's not colorful, but golden." Huang Jie was slightly surprised. "It seems that you are lucky to have encountered the most difficult heaven spirit detoxifying insect in the chaotic ocean. Come on my ship and have a chat." "I'll do as you say." Han Fei didn't expect Huang Jie to be so straightforward. He didn't put on any airs at all and just let Han Fei go. Han Fei's figure flashed, breaking through the void. The snow girl glanced at him and wondered why he went to the big ship of the 10,000 Poison Heaven. Bing Shua Chuling and the snow girl were in the same room. At this moment, she said in surprise, "Master," the snow girl said lightly, "It's okay." Although Huang Jie is a little eccentric, he is not that kind of bloodthirsty and sinister person. It's just that he cultivates poison. On the big ship of the 10,000 Poison Heaven, a group of venerables were surprised to see the holy child of the snow god's temple. They were all dumbfounded. "Why is he on our ship?" Swish! As soon as the ship opened, old Huang Jie knocked on the door and said, "Come in." The venerables looked up at Huang Jie in surprise. The palace master had always been indifferent to others and was unwilling to make friends with people from other immortal palaces. Why did he ask a junior to come on board this time? However, Han Fei didn't meet these venerables, but went directly to Huang Jie's cabin. As soon as he entered Huang Jie's cabin, Han Fei saw that the whole cabin was full of all kinds of bottles and jars, as well as all kinds of poisonous herbs and fruits, and even the smell was highly toxic. The moment Han Fei entered the cabin, the color of his skin began to change slightly. However, the powerful detoxification effect of the heaven spirit detoxifying insect made the essence blood in Han Fei's body crazily devour and analyze these poisons. Huang Jie stared at Han Fei for a few seconds before he chuckled. Interesting. Boy, you've eaten a lot of poisons before, haven't you? The heaven spirit detoxifying insect has always been fragile. If you can keep it alive and feed it with all kinds of poisons, it can be said that no one in the sea expansion realm can poison you to death. And you, boy, can even integrate the power of the heaven spirit detoxifying insect into your body. That's rare, but how did you do it? Han Fei didn't hide anything. The other party was a master of the 10,000 poison sect. If he bragged, he would be easily seen through. He had a purpose, so there was no harm in being honest. Han Fei said, "When I was going through the tribulation, the fourth lightning transformed my body and injected the power of the spiritual insect into my body." Of course, Han Fei found an excuse and made it up. However, as long as it had something to do with the heavenly tribulation, it was not easy to be exposed. Huang Jie raised his eyebrows. "Oh, the fourth heavenly tribulation is the 4-9 Kings tribulation? The Snow God's temple is indeed hiding its secrets. It's interesting that the heavenly tribulation can integrate the heaven spirit detoxifying insect into your body. However, it's a pity that your knowledge of poison is too shallow. Just the smell in my cabin can make you react, which shows that your ability to resist poison is limited. You may be able to resist poison, but only a little. Besides, you can't resist the poison of the sea expansion realm. Even the poison of the venerable realm can't resist it." Han Fei frowned slightly. "Am I so bad?" Huang Jie smiled disdainfully. "I've been playing with poison for tens of thousands of years. I can see through you at a glance. Your only advantage is that you have inherited the characteristics of the heaven spirit detoxifying insect. In the 36 black heavens, there is no one who can do this. What a pity. You are a disciple of the Snow God's temple. I may be able to give you some poison, but no more help will be enough." Chapter 1744. For the kings of the 10,000 poison heaven, Han Fei was just a heavenly talent in the ice and snow heaven and had nothing to do with them. Therefore, Huang Jie wouldn't give Han Fei more advice. This was a matter of course. Huang Jie was well aware of this, and so was Han Fei. Therefore, when Huang Jie said that he could give him a few poisons, Han Fei knew that it was impossible to get a big opportunity from Huang Jie. Han Fei was proficient in many things, but he had never been interested in using poison. Even though he had used something like the Poison King in the past, in the eyes of the true Tao of poison, it was probably not a poison at all. Besides, Han Fei didn't refine the Poison King himself, but Cao Qiu. He just tricked Cao Qiu into coming here. Han Fei slightly cupped his hands. "Thank you for your kindness, Senior. However, if I may ask, if I want to know how to make full use of the advantages of this body, what direction should I work towards? What price do I need to pay?" Although Han Fei was not good at using poison and his body's ability to resist poison was limited, Han Fei knew that his ability was quite extraordinary. He didn't pay much attention to it before because there were very few poison users in the Yin-Yang heaven and the Waterwood heaven. Those who could walk the path of poison were few and far between. In fact, the reason why there were so few poison cultivators was that those who didn't practice poison, well, were basically poisoned to death. Few of them could live long. That was why Han Fei was so interested in using poison at this moment. He might be able to defeat all his enemies in the future, but if someone could kill him with poison, wouldn't he be doomed? "Oh, are you negotiating with me?" Huang Jie's lips curled into a sinister smile. Han Fei said lightly, "I have to ask. Otherwise, Wouldn't it be a pity to waste your talent for nothing? Ha ha! The ice and snow heaven has never had anything to do with the 10,000 poison heaven. If I want to cooperate with someone, I'll look for the snow girls. Why should I look for you? Han Fei smiled faintly. The major palaces always have a purpose in going to the land of the king grave. The 10,000 poison heaven is no exception. Is the key to the imperial palace enough? Huang Jie narrowed his eyes slightly. The matter of the imperial palace was not a secret. In any case, all the half-monarchs who went to the land of the fallen monarchs knew about it. Even some of the peak venerables knew about it. However, Han Fei took this matter as a condition for negotiation. This piqued Huang Jie's interest. Huang Jie said, "Oh, tell me about it. What I need is guidance on how to fight against poison. It just so happens that this junior's strength isn't bad. Perhaps I can get more keys to the Arch Palace from the place where King perished." Huang Jie snorted. "Do you think I'll believe you just because you say so? It's fine for young people to be a little conceited, but they absolutely cannot be arrogant." Han Fei said casually, "I'm not in a hurry. If there's a chance later, I'll take the key and ask you again." Huang Jie scrutinized Han Fei. After a few seconds, he said, "Take off your mask." Hearing that, Han Fei thought to himself, my God-deceiving precious technique shouldn't be seen through. Even if he saw through it, as long as he didn't reveal his true appearance, he wouldn't be able to see through it with a single glance. So Han Fei reached out and grabbed the mask. The face under the mask was Zhang Xuanyu's face. Anyway, it wasn't the first time that Han Fei had used Zhang Xuanyu's face, so it didn't matter if he used it one more time. Huang Jie clicked his tongue. "You look quite handsome. Why do you wear a mask?" Han Fei put the mask back on his face. To isolate the love of the world and pursue the supreme Tao. No one knew whether Huang Jie believed Han Fei's nonsense or not. He said, "Since you have fused with the power of the heaven spirit detoxifying insect, you only need to eat poison. If you eat all the poisons in the world, sooner or later you will be invulnerable to all poisons under the king realm. However, eating poison is not a Tao after all. It's like eating herbs directly, which is far less effective than using pills. Eating pills directly wastes too much of the power of the medicine. But using pills, you can use 70% to 80% of the essence of the medicine. Therefore, one medicinal Dan can be worth hundreds or even thousands of spiritual herbs. This is the logic behind it. Using poison is also not bad." Han Fei wondered, "Poison pills?" Huang Jie said, "Any kind of acquired poison can be made into pills. You're interesting. Let me tell you, there are tens of thousands of synthetic poisons in the 10,000 poison heaven. If you can pay the price, you can trade for it. As for your path to resist poison, this king can also explain it to you. Even if you fuse with the heaven spirit detoxifying insect, it's just physical. Poisons at the soul level are more terrible than poisons at the physical level. If you want to learn from me, you can come to the 10,000 poison heaven with your sincerity after this trip to the secret realm." Han Fei was tempted. He slightly cupped his hands. "Thank you, senior." Huang Jie said, "Since I promised to give you some poisons, I won't break my promise." Huang Jie waved his hand, and a bottle of colorful, bubbling poisonous water was handed to Han Fei. Huang Jie said, "For others, this is a great poison, but for you, it's a great tonic. This poison is called Thousand Venom. There are 1,000 kinds of poisons. You owe the 10,000 poison heaven a favor." Although Huang Jie said he would give it to Han Fei, he actually accepted the favor. With this favor, if Han Fei attacked the people of the 10,000 poison heaven in the land of King Grave, Han Fei's mind would be broken. Huang Jie was a king after all. No matter how eccentric he was still an expert who had lived for tens of thousands of years. He also noticed that Han Fei seemed to be different. When facing him, Han Fei didn't change his expression at all. He was not afraid or worried, like an old monk in meditation. This kid was arrogant and extremely conceited. If it were under other circumstances, he might have the intention to kill this kid. However, with the snow girl next to him, he couldn't do that. And Han Fei was arrogant. After receiving benefits from him, it was impossible for him to attack the people of the 10,000 poison heaven. As for other things, Huang Jie thought that as long as Han Fei dared to come to the 10,000 poison heaven, as long as he had the capital to pay, the 10,000 poison heaven could make him go bankrupt with a smile. After bidding farewell to Huang Jie, Han Fei didn't have any contact with the people of the 10,000 poison heaven at all. He directly returned to the snow god. This scene made many people on the ship suspicious. Since when did the ice and snow heavens have some connection with the 10,000 poison heaven? That saint child actually confronted the 10,000 poison ancestor? How could that old man be so easy to talk to? Because Han Fei boarded the ship of the 10,000 poison heaven, many immortal palaces and even kings of the 13 outer heavens were actually a little confused. They could only warn the heavenly talents under their command to pay attention to the ice and snow heavens and the 10,000 poison heaven. After returning to the snow god, Han Fei discovered the snow girl's perception. So, he directly came to the snow girl's cabin. After entering, the snow girl said, "Do you know the way of poison?" Han Fei shook his head slightly. "No, but I need it." The snow girl was slightly stunned. The 10,000 poison heaven is a bit incompatible with the families of the 36 mysterious heavens. It's mainly because the 10,000 poison ancestor, Huang Jie, is too good at using poison. Over the past tens of thousands of years, 3 pioneer sea experts have died in Huang Jie's hands. Even so, although the 10,000 poison heaven is in the outer heavens, even in the inner heavens, few families are willing to provoke the 10,000 poison heaven. If you want it, you have to do it openly like today. Otherwise, the consequences will be really unpredictable. Han Fei was a little surprised. Is it strange that 3 kings died in a battle of the same realm? After all, they are masters of poison, and they walk the path of a minority. This kind of person was supposed to be stronger. Otherwise, they would have been eradicated long ago. Han Fei didn't take it seriously and nodded slightly. Got it. I'm going to cultivate in seclusion. After a while, when Han Fei returned to his cabin and entered Forge the Universe, he was no longer in a hurry to cultivate, but took out the bottle of 1,000 venom liquid as soon as possible. Poison. It was normal for it to be in bad condition. As for this kind of thing, it was obvious that it was poisonous. Because everyone knew that it was poisonous, who would actually touch it? Only someone like Han Fei, who could absorb poisons, could take a sip of it openly. Of course, before drinking it, Han Fei still took out the 9-palace ruler of fortune to measure it. When he got a flat hexagram, he breathed a sigh of relief. Han Fei pinched his nose and took a small sip. Huh, it's sour and sweet. Why does it taste a bit like yogurt? Of course, Han Fei didn't drink all of it. He just took a sip. However, after this sip, Han Fei found that his skin turned red and green for a while, and his whole body was emitting a hazy aura. Then, Han Fei felt that his head was dizzy, as if he had drunk too much. Han Fei knew that this was a sign of poisoning. Fortunately, this sign of poisoning only lasted about 3 minutes. Then, it slowly disappeared. Han Fei realized that he seemed to have adapted to this poison a little. It was probably not suitable for him to drink anymore today. Han Fei would take a sip every few days. This bottle could probably last him 7 or 8 meals. The old tortoise said, "I think you can make a trip to the 10,000 poison sky for the Tao of poison. In this endless sea, if you can be immune to poison, your survival ability will be increased by at least 20%. I just don't know if that old man is good or bad." Han Fei chuckled. "Old Yuan, who cares if he is good or bad? What we're doing is a deal. Since it is a deal, we each take what we need. He gave me a portion of poison now, which is not a sign of friendship. It's just that the place where the king died is near, and he doesn't want to cause trouble. Let's wait and see." Chapter 1745. 8 days later, Han Fei had already finished drinking the 1,000 venom liquid. When Han Fei took the last sip, the time that could make him dizzy was reduced from more than 3 minutes to about 3 minutes. This meant that his resistance to poison had been greatly improved, and this was just a kind of venom. If he went to the 10,000 poison heaven and ate different poisons every day, he would probably be able to resist most of the strange poisons in the world in several years. Of course, ancestor of 10,000 poison Huang Jia, had reminded Han Fei that his current poison resistance was only at the physical level and the soul level. Han Fei didn't know what level of poison this was at the soul level, but he had encountered it before. However, the kind he had encountered before was not very strong. After being reminded by Huang Jia, Han Fei paid more attention to this matter. When he had time, he must inquire about this matter. When the old turtle told Han Fei that they had arrived, Han Fei leisurely left Forge the Universe. Although the improvement of the pure mystic body was fast, Rome wasn't built in a day. He hadn't reached the bottleneck again, but it should be soon. For him now, it didn't matter what his realm was. Anyway, he could still fight against the king-level masters. Along the way, the fleet of the 13 outer heavens didn't encounter a single enemy on the route. This was almost a matter of no suspense. There were 6 kings here, and hundreds of peak-level venerables and half-king-level masters accompanied them. Who dared to ambush them in this situation? According to the old turtle, it took the entire fleet 8 days to pass through the Mist Sea. In addition to the Mist Sea, there were fishing boats waiting on the route immediately. It was the ship of the Grand Purity Palace. Han Fei glanced at it, but because the fleet was not open, he couldn't tell whether it was good or bad. However, Han Fei could feel that the environment in the inner domain was much better than that in the outer domain. In the inner domain, there was no more chaotic spiritual energy, and the purity of the spiritual energy was much higher. Looking at the creatures in the sea, he could sense that there were many explorers among them. However, no one tried to capture them. In the eyes of these people, these explorer-level creatures were like ants. Perhaps only when an ant walked under one's feet would one step on it. Very few people would actively step on an ant to kill it. Therefore, in the inner domain, the strong masters wouldn't attack the sea creatures for no reason. For example, Han Fei wasn't interested in holy spirits below the semi-venerable level. At most, he would eat it as a meal, and the only thing he would consider was whether it was delicious or not. Ahead, on the great ship of Extreme Purity Palace, a king cupped his hands towards the kings of the 13 outer realms. Welcome, fellow Taoists. Ji Xian has been waiting for you for a long time. Most of the 13 heavens of the inner region have already gathered at the Supreme Purity Palace. If we go there now and take the shortest route, it will only take about 2 days. After passing through the sea of fog, the environment was much better. Therefore, most people had already come out. Han Fei could tell that Ji Xian's strength wasn't ordinary. The old turtle said he's already at the sea expansion realm. His strength isn't bad. Han Fei was lost for words. The king is here to welcome you? Han Fei recalled what the Snow Lady had said. The 13 inner heavens meant that they had more than one king. How many kings would the Extreme Purity Palace, which was ranked first among the 36 immortal palaces, have? There was no emotion in Han Fei's eyes, as if he was looking at everything indifferently. In fact, Han Fei was already calculating. This was an enemy. King Crab had once told him about the hostile forces of Yin Heaven and 9 Palace Heaven. Among them, there were 7 main forces: Extreme Purity Palace, Wuji Palace, Dream Weaving Palace, 5 Elements Palace, Wild Corpse Palace, Investiture God Palace, and Medicine King Palace. In the outer domain, there were only 5 Elements Palace and Wild Corpse Palace. Their enemy was Extreme Purity Palace. The reason why Yin Heaven was in the barbaric abyss was because of these immortal palaces. Of course, his goal now wasn't revenge. The competition between the immortal palaces would only start when he was at the same level of strength as them. Moreover, there were still many secrets waiting for him to explore in the chaotic Azure Sea. He had to become a king first before thinking about other things. Another 2 days later, before the ships of the 13 outer heavens appeared at the Extreme Purity Palace, everyone had already seen the prosperity of the Extreme Purity Palace. On the other hand, the Grand Pure One used the long sword as a marker. The sword was surrounded by green gas. The wind-moving ship traveled in the sky. As the fleet moved, it passed by hundreds of such ships. The main city of the Extreme Purity Palace was called the Ancient Heavenly Imperial City. It was said that it was the remains of a magnificent city from ancient times that had been transformed into the ancient heavenly imperial city. Different from the other giant cities, the ancient heavenly imperial city was made up of 208 messy highlands, formed by giant islands surrounded by clouds. It looked full of immortal chi. Those who didn't know would think that these islands were the immortal palace itself. Han Fei had seen the thunderfire sky, the ice-snow sky, the waterwood sky, and the yin-yang heaven, but none of them had such immortal chi as the extreme purity palace. Other than the giant floating islands, there were even more immortal chi. Around the giant islands, there were often people walking on swords, all dressed in green, making them look like immortals. Bing Xue Chuling said, "The extreme purity palace is the top of the 36 profound heavens. People born in the extreme purity palace are always proud. However, some people are arrogant, some are aloof, and some are stubborn. That's why the people of the extreme purity palace like to cultivate swordsmanship." Han Fei was confused. "What about the Sword God Palace?" Bing Xue Chuling said, "The Sword God Palace is mysterious, but the sword cultivators of the Sword God Palace can only be stronger than those of the extreme purity palace. Since ancient times, the Sword God Palace has been famous for its sword cultivators, who have reached the peak of the 36 profound heavens. Even the sword cultivators of the extreme purity palace want to cultivate in the Sword God Palace. However, the Sword God Palace never accepts disciples from other palaces." Han Fei sneered, "But there's still no match for the Sword God Palace." The Snow Lady interjected telepathically, "The sword cultivators of the extreme purity palace are not much weaker than those of the Sword God Palace. Besides, the extreme purity palace has various cultivation techniques and combat techniques. The stronger you are, the stronger you are. Many heavenly talents of the extreme purity palace have found ancient seeds and awakened secret inheritances. Don't underestimate them." Han Fei was intrigued. Awakened ancient seeds? Was it an ancient species like Luo Xiaobai's divine manipulation technique? If that was the case, they were indeed heavenly talents. Swish, swish, swish. The ships of the 13 heavens were anchored in an ancient tree city in the heavenly fault ancient city. There was an ancient tree more than 300,000 meters tall in this city, also known as the heavenly fault ancient tree. The scenery here was the most pleasant, no matter what the king of the extreme purity palace was like. Since he ruled the 36 profound heavens, he must have done a good job. The arrival of the 13 heavens had to be treated with the highest standard. The kings wouldn't go with the venerable realm cultivators. The kings would receive them in person. The venerable realm cultivators and the half-king realm cultivators were also treated differently. For example, in the Snow God Palace, Han Fei and Bing Xue Chuling were known as the Holy Children and Saintesses. They represented the Snow God Palace, so they were treated with the highest standard. As for the other two half-king realm cultivators of the Snow God Palace, they were just half-king realm cultivators. Being half-king realm cultivators didn't mean they were top heavenly talents. Those who could be called top heavenly talents were the representatives of the major divine palaces. When the fishing boats were anchored, there were people to receive them, but their accommodations were very close. The one who received them was a peak-level venerable female, venerable from the extreme purity palace. When the woman saw Bing Xue Chuling and the others, she slightly bowed, but she only talked to Bing Xue Chuling. She said, "Sister Chuling, it's been a while. I didn't expect you to become a half-king realm cultivator in just 100 years." Bing Xue Chuling bowed back. "Sister Zhengyu, it's been a long time. You made great progress, too. I think it's only a matter of time before you become a half-king realm cultivator." Zhengyu smiled. "Thank you for your kind words, sister." Then, Zhengyu looked at Han Fei. "This must be the holy child that the Snow Lady just recruited, right? I'm Zhengyu. Greetings, holy child." Many people from the Snow God Palace looked displeased. Although the holy child's appearance was abrupt, the Snow Lady had been prepared. He was a holy child after all, second only to one person in the Snow God Palace. At the very least, this fellow should call him Lord Holy Child, and not just call him Lord Holy Child. However, the pride of the people from the extreme purity palace was nothing compared to Han Fei's. After Zheng Yu said that, Han Fei simply glanced at her indifferently and said coldly, "You're excused, Zheng Yu." Everyone. Hiss, Zheng Yu was stunned. Am I bowing to you? I'm just greeting you symbolically. The venerables of the Snow God Palace, including the two half-kings behind him, were much more fond of Han Fei. The two half-kings were even talking telepathically. I didn't think Lord Holychild was good before, but now I think he's too manly. The other half-king replied, not bad. He's more and more pleasing to the eye. This woman dares to ignore etiquette. She has forgotten who she is. Zheng Yu frowned and looked at Bing Xuechuling. Seeing that the latter looked indifferent, as if it was a matter of course, she was immediately infuriated. However, she was here to welcome a guest, and she couldn't be rude. Therefore, Zheng Yu slightly straightened her body and put on a proud look. Everyone, please come with me. The 13 heavens of the inner district are all here. Let's settle down early and attend the banquet early. Chapter 1746. The ancient tree city had always been the place where the Grand Purity Palace received outsiders. There were many ancient trees here, and many palaces and guest rooms were often built around the trees. Han Fei and the others were taken to a mountain peak about 2,000 meters high. There was a small castle-like wooden courtyard here, where Han Fei and Bing Xuechuling were arranged to live. Around the small main peak was a circle of ordinary courtyards for the other members of the Snow God's Palace. Zheng Yu, who was annoyed by Han Fei, stopped chatting with Bing Xuechuling and said, "Holy boy, holy girl, this is where you will live for the next few days." 2 days later, the 36 Xuantians will set off for the secret realm together. Now, please come to the banquet. Bing Xuechuling still had some manners. She bowed slightly and said, "Thank you." However, Han Fei put his hands behind his back and gave off a cold and arrogant aura that said, "Heaven is the boss. I'm the second. All living beings are ants to me." He did not even look at Zheng Yu. Zheng Yu was even more resentful. "Why are you so arrogant? Snow God's Palace? Which of the 36 Xuantians is worse than you? It's just a title. Do you really think you're so important?" Zheng Yu thought, with holy boy Shuizhan's temper, there will be a good show later. Han Fei came out as soon as Jin Quan died. The Snow God's Palace is a slap in the face of the Golden Crow Heaven. As a king, they won't get angry because of such a small thing. But for the heavenly talents of the Golden Crow Heaven, slapping the Immortal Palace's face is equivalent to slapping themselves. Under the heavenly falled ancient tree, there was a sword observation platform. It was said that an ancient powerhouse once carved a sword talisman on the tree for future generations to admire. It was said that this sword talisman contained the great Tao of sword. However, even after 10,000 years, no one had ever seen a flower grow on the sword viewing platform. Even so, this didn't affect the reputation of the sword observation platform. Many people came because of its reputation. Today, a group of heavenly talents gathered here. Ordinary people naturally didn't dare to approach. Zheng Yu led Han Fei and Bing Xuechuling to the periphery of the sword observation platform and pointed. "Please, everyone should have come to the sword observation platform now. They are all heavenly talents. Please." Bing Xuechuling bowed slightly. "Thank you, Sister Zheng Yu." After Zheng Yu left, Bing Xuechuling said, "The Golden Crow Celestial Pole might come looking for trouble later. We can bear with it for a while, but we can't reveal too much of your power." Han Fei only responded softly and looked up at the heavenly fault ancient tree. The leaves were green, and occasionally there were purple flowers. When the wind blew, a few purple flowers would fall. The scenery was not bad. On the sword viewing platform, there were 26 small square arrays of seats, and in front of everyone was a hollowed-out table. On the table, there were spirit fruits and fine wine. At this time, most of the guests had already taken their seats, except for the Snow God's Palace. Therefore, when Han Fei and Bing Xuechuling arrived, Bing Xuechuling immediately realized that something was wrong. He heard her say, "We've been tricked." Everyone else was directly invited to the sword viewing platform. Only we were brought to our lodgings first. That's why we're late. Hearing what Ice and Snow Chuling said, Han Fei didn't care at all. That Zheng Yu was indeed cunning. The people of the Grand Purity Palace were really not that good. At this moment, except for one seat that was empty, all the other seats had been taken. Everyone's eyes naturally fell on Han Fei and Bingxue Chuling. Or rather, their eyes mainly fell on Han Fei. Many people had seen Bingxue Chuling before. Han Fei was the only one wearing a mask among all of them. Who else would they look at if not him? But at this moment, there was an awkward situation. Han Fei and Bingxue Chuling's seats were on the left side of the ring. From right to left, they could see a sword figure more than 30 meters long on the heavenly falled ancient tree. Han Fei was about to walk over when Bingxue Chuling said, "Don't go there. The sword viewing platform is for watching swords. If we sit there, our backs will be to the sword figure and we won't be able to see swords. So we should sit here. Besides, next to that seat, there are 6 people from the Golden Crow Heaven." Han Fei thought to himself, "What a coincidence." At this moment, someone from the Golden Crow Heaven said with a smile, "We've waited for a long time. Finally, the Holy Lady Chuling is here. Hurry up and take your seats. We're about to start." The other person from the Golden Crow Heaven snorted coldly and muttered in a very low voice, "The Snow God's palace is really impressive." However, all the people present were heavenly talents. Han Fei glanced at them. Only less than half of them were peak-level venerables, and most of them had reached the level of half-king. It was safe to say that these people were only one step away from becoming half-kings. Chances were that they would pass the tribulation and become half-kings someday. With so many experts present, how could their murmurs not be heard? So, many people wanted to see how the two from the Snow God's Temple were going to deal with it. Bingxue Chuling looked at a person not far away and asked, "Fellow cultivator Ji Chun, why are our tables placed there?" Ji Chun smiled and was about to speak when the person who greeted Bingxue Chuling spoke first. "The Golden Crow Heaven is very close to the Snow God's Temple. Of course we have to sit together. Holy Lady Chuling, what do you think?" Hearing that, Ji Chun simply said, "Holy Lady Chuling, please forgive me. I would have arranged for you to sit next to us, but the fellow cultivators of the Golden Crow Heaven are quite happy that you're here. I can't stand in their way." Immediately, the experts of the divine palaces all looked at Bingxue Chuling. Although there were divine palaces that were on friendly terms with the Snow God's Temple, it was quite normal for the heavenly talents to watch a show. Besides, wouldn't they be targeted if they showed up rashly? After all, the Snow God's Temple would suffer a minor loss at most. At this moment, many people were whispering to each other. Han Fei didn't know anyone here, nor could he tell which side they were from. However, he could hear their secret voice transmission. There were a few righteous women who were sending voice transmissions. The Supreme Purity Palace and the Golden Crow Heaven are going too far. Aren't they deliberately making things difficult for others? Another person responded, "We don't have to worry about it. The Glass Heaven never cares about the crap of the divine palaces outside." When Han Fei heard this, he took a look at him. 3 men and 3 women from the Glass Heaven came, a total of 6 people. They all seemed to be beautiful women. It was too easy for anyone who had cultivated to this level to be a beautiful woman. Han Fei didn't care. Han Fei only paid attention to these people. After all, he would have to sneak away with these people. So people were also talking to each other. Han Fei had only seen the experts of the 10,000 Poison Heaven. 3 men from the 10,000 Poison Heaven came and were discussing. One of them said, "If it were me, I would have poisoned them on the spot and killed the Golden Crow Heaven." Another person said, "You're stupid and bold. Do you dare to poison him to death? Once they're detoxified, they'll be mortal enemies." Someone else said, "I remember that the Snow God's Temple ship docked at about the same time as ours. They couldn't have been set up just because they were a little late, right? Did they fall into a trap? This must have been premeditated." Everyone was discussing in secret. Although Bingxue Chuling was a holy girl, she was so angry that her heart was trembling. She thought to herself, the Grand Purity Palace has gone too far. Han Fei was helpless. So what if I'm a holy girl? Holy girls are also human beings and can get angry. Seeing that Bingxue Chuling was thinking, Han Fei thought to himself, what the hell is there to think about? Han Fei made a decision for Bingxue Chuling. You're not on good terms with them. They just want to embarrass you today. Why don't you take the initiative to find a way out? The void of space changed. In an instant, the two tables were about to be teleported and appeared in front of Han Fei and Bingshu Chuling. Hiss, Han Fei attacked without saying a word, which was beyond everyone's expectation. At least in the eyes of the heavenly talents of the 13 outer heavens and even the 13 inner heavens, the snow god's temple couldn't be so domineering. The most inappropriate thing to do was to change their positions. What if they couldn't get the two tables? That would be a great humiliation. However, would Han Fei consider the possibility that they couldn't get the tables? He had never failed when he snatched something. Humph, however, the void was shaking, and someone from the Golden Crow heaven said indifferently, "Fellow cultivator Shui Zhan, aren't you being too petty?" "What? Are you disrespecting the Golden Crow heaven?" Han Fei saw that this person was a spatial cultivator. Han Fei knew that his spatial cultivation was probably not as good as this person's. So, he wrapped the tables with his soul power and forcibly broke through the void. The person from the Golden Crow heaven had a sneer on his face. "This brute, although he's using a small spatial path that's not refined enough, I'd like to see what kind of ability you have to move this table over." Immediately, the person released his soul power, trying to suppress the tables. But Han Fei smiled. "My spatial cultivation is not as good as yours, and my soul power is not as good as yours." At this moment, Han Fei secretly activated the 100-beast soul devourer in his soul. Crack, crack, crack. Boom! Pooch! At this moment, the void was shattered, and the tables appeared in front of Han Fei and Bingshu, chuling out of thin air. And the heavenly talent of the Golden Crow heaven vomited a mouthful of blood more than 30 feet away. It wasn't just a mouthful of blood. This person was bleeding from all his orifices, and tears of blood were flowing out his eyes. Many people were shocked to see this. Han Fei, on the other hand, sat cross-legged as if nothing had happened, and said indifferently, "How weak." First update. Asking for votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 1747. Han Fei forced himself to attack, and won in an instant, which shocked everyone present. Today, those who were able to sit at this banquet were not simple characters. Everyone knew that this saint child should be extraordinary, but they didn't expect him to be so domineering and strong. Hua Xian of the Golden Crow heaven was definitely not weak. Although he was at the peak stage of the Venerable Realm, he majored in the Space Tao. Those who could walk on this Tao must be very strong. Although Han Fei just tried his hand, everyone could see that Han Fei's real collision with Hua Xian was the power of his soul, and his Space Tao should be inferior to Hua Xian's. However, as soon as the power of his soul touched Hua Xian was immediately defeated. This meant that Han Fei's soul power was extremely strong. Originally, everyone just wanted to watch a show, but now, the people of the Golden Crow heaven obviously screwed up the show. This loss of face was not a small one. It was a complete loss of face. All of a sudden, Han Fei felt that everyone's eyes were on him. As if nothing had happened, Han Fei teased, "How weak." Then he sat cross-legged and picked up a spiritual fruit. In fact, Han Fei also knew some Space Tao. Therefore, everyone saw that the spiritual fruit in his hand was inexplicably missing a mouthful. It turned out that Han Fei had eaten a spiritual fruit in the mask by grafting the void. Han Fei's behavior naturally attracted a lot of attention. The three women of the Glass Heaven were quite surprised. One of them said, "I didn't expect that he would win so simply and brutally." Another person said, "Who is to blame for this?" They can only blame the Golden Crow heaven for underestimating the heroes of the world because of the high status of the Immortal Palace. How can anyone who could come here be a pushover? They lost because they underestimated the enemy. Bingshu Chuling secretly smiled bitterly. Han Fei chose to attack directly. After all, he was a master of the Immortal Palace. He was almost at the same level as a king. How could a king be despised by others? However, Han Fei's attack would definitely make people wary of his strength. However, on second thought, Han Fei probably didn't care that someone was wary of his strength. Someone who could easily kill a half-step king in one move only needed to be careful of the king himself. Not long after the two of them sat down, they heard a powerhouse from the Golden Crow heavens say, "Fellow cultivator Shuejan." It was just a joke. "Why did you hurt him?" Han Fei said indifferently. "If you dare to pick a fight with me, you should be prepared to be beaten. Why do you need to hide anything?" These words were too direct, directly piercing through the layer of gauze. "The two of us are already enemies. Don't you have any idea whether or not you want to take me down a notch?" In the 13 heavens of the outer heavens, someone from the Avalon of 5 elements said, "This Shuejan is indeed powerful. However, this person clearly possesses the strength of a quasi-king, yet he insists on disguising it as a peak exalted realm. Could it be that he only possesses the combat strength of a quasi-king, and isn't it the quasi-king realm?" Someone shook his head slightly. "Let's wait and see." The show had just begun, so there was no need to jump out too early. If he was eaten by someone else, he would lose a lot of face. The Golden Crow Celestials all had ugly expressions on their faces. They had been publicly humiliated. How could they not take revenge? Unfortunately, now was not the time to look for him. The time was not ripe yet. Everyone, just as everyone was waiting to watch the show, Ji-chun from the Grand Purity Palace stood up from the table next to Han Fei. Ji-chun said, "There was some misunderstanding just now. However, the 36 immortal palaces are all humans. In this gathering, we should work together as one. It's just a joke, a competition. To us, it's nothing more than sparring and giving pointers. It should be very beneficial." As he spoke, Ji-chun glanced at Huaxian, meaning, "You should be of great benefit. It's better to recognize Shuejan's strength now than to find out later." Ji-chen's words were gentle and his voice was flat. He didn't seem to be putting on airs, but he casually made it sound like a trivial matter. If Han Fei and the others had lost this round, he probably wouldn't have said that. Han Fei couldn't help but sigh. The people from the Grand Purity Palace were all like this. I wonder if the people from the Grand Purity Palace are all so sanctimonious? If they are, then the Grand Purity Palace is indeed the enemy of the Yin-Yang heaven. Han Fei despised them for their hypocrisy and their hypocrisy. Ji-chun said, "Why don't we reward the sword talismans and drink some enlightenment tea?" This enlightenment tea is collected from the bud of the heavenly fault ancient tree. It's a specialty of the Grand Purity Palace. At this moment, Bing Xue Chuling said to Han Fei via voice transmission. In fact, during this period of time, it's also a process for the heavenly talents of the major immortal palaces to get to know each other. Although there are many heavenly talents in the 26 heavens, there are very few who are qualified to become kings. This time, those who have come here are not ordinary people. Han Fei asked, "So, is it going to be a befriending session later?" Bing Xue Chuling nodded. "That's what I'm thinking. But the heavenly talents of different immortal palaces may not treat each other sincerely." Han Fei sneered. "I don't need to make friends." Bing Xue Chuling thought to herself, "What do you mean you don't need to make friends? It's because you attacked the Golden Crow heaven just now that you've become a thorn in their side. At this time, whoever befriended you would have to bear the risk of offending the Golden Crow heaven. And offending the Golden Crow heaven was actually offending the Grand Purity Palace. Everyone knew that the old king of the Golden Crow heaven had fallen. Since then, the Grand Purity Palace had been supporting them. Therefore, when the people of the Golden Crow heaven were slapped in the face by Han Fei, the Snow God's palace didn't just offend one of them. Of course, it wasn't that no one dared to compete with the Grand Purity Palace on the surface. At least, the 4 immortal palaces weren't afraid. At the beginning of the banquet, the people of the major immortal palaces knew each other, and no one came to Han Fei to get to know them. Seeing this, a weak, scholarly man cupped his hands at Han Fei. "Fellow cultivator Shuejan, I'm Song Kaiyuan from the Grand Darkness Heaven." Then, Song Kaiyuan said to Han Fei via voice transmission, "Brother Shuejan, you have an extraordinary opportunity. Just now, I sensed a roar in that space, which is very similar to the long-lost secret technique of the Beast King Heaven. Soul-suppressing roar of beasts. Brother Shuejan must have had an extraordinary opportunity to learn the great techniques of the Beast King Heaven." Han Fei's heart did a flip. Did he recognize me already? His soul-suppressing roar of beasts had been deduced and upgraded. It seemed that the grand darkness heaven really couldn't be underestimated. The saying that it had collected the great techniques of all races in the world was not for nothing. Han Fei replied, I once found an ancient place where there were many remnant souls of beasts. I learned it there. Song Kaiyuan thought to himself, sure enough. Only in this way could Han Fei learn the soul-suppressing roar of beasts. Otherwise, if he needed to hear the roar of hundreds of beasts, wouldn't he have to go to the real Beast King heaven? Song Kaiyuan from the Grand Darkness heaven greeted Han Fei. His junior sister also looked like a well-read woman. With a gentle and tranquil face, she saluted Han Fei. Mu Shui Sisi from the Grand Darkness heaven greets fellow cultivator Shuezhan. The fact that the people of the Grand Darkness heaven took the lead to make friends with the Snow God's palace immediately attracted a lot of attention. Many people inadvertently glanced at them. The people of the outer 13 heavens smiled bitterly. Someone said, sure enough, only the 4 immortal palaces like Taixien and Wuliang have the confidence to challenge the Grand Purity Palace. Someone agreed. It's a pity that we, the outer 13 heavens, have to be careful in the inner area. At the moment when the king-perished land is about to open, it's not good to make a big enemy for such a trivial matter. Someone from the 10,000 poison heavens sighed. I don't envy making friends with Shuezhan, but I envy having the confidence to challenge the immortal palaces of the inner area like the Grand Darkness heaven. A woman from the 100 Flowers Palace said, I'm afraid the Snow God's palace will have a hard time on this trip to the king-perished land. Someone from the Golden Crow heaven said unkindly, the Grand Darkness heaven has been domineering for a long time. This time, the king-perished land will make sure they never return. Han Fei heard a lot of voice transmissions. The people of the Grand Purity Palace were really drinking tea, enjoying the scenery, or greeting guests. The Glaze Palace, Wuliang Palace, Sword God Palace, and Taixin Palace had always been on the same side. Therefore, after the people of the Grand Darkness heaven greeted Han Fei, someone from the Sword God Palace nodded slightly to him. Jian Hui from the Sword God's Palace greets fellow cultivator Snow God's Palace. Han Fei returned the salute. He knew the character of the swordsman, so he didn't dislike Jian Hui. Bing Xue Chuling said, Jian Hui's strength is unfathomable. I've only heard that his strongest sword can rival a king. Han Fei's heart did a flip. Sure enough, in the outside world, there are super heavenly talents who could defeat kings. Bing Xue Chuling continued, Song Kaiyuan is good at arrays and fighting. He's not as gentle as he looks. Han Fei was enlightened. At this moment, a burly man from the Boundless Heaven looked at Han Fei and Bing Xue Chuling gently. Boundless Mercy, I'm Li Kaitian from the Boundless Heaven. Nice to meet you. Bing Xue Chuling said, I don't know this person. I've never seen him before. In the end, a woman from the Glaze Heaven formally introduced Han Fei. Fellow cultivator Shuezhan, I'm Lu Ran. That was very satisfying. Han Fei nodded slightly. These 4 forces met Han Fei one after another. They didn't really care about the Snow God's palace, but they didn't get along with the Grand Purity Palace. Therefore, they were happy to make friends with someone who was an enemy of the Golden Crow Heaven or the Grand Purity Palace. After a moment, Han Fei was eating spiritual fruits while observing the sword talisman. He thought to himself, just because other people can't see through it doesn't mean my gourd can't. When a message appeared in the demon purification pot, Ji Chun stood up and said, Everyone, I think we've introduced ourselves to each other. Why don't we start the next round now? Updates will be resumed tomorrow. Notice, tomorrow will be resumed at 3 o'clock. Tomorrow will be resumed at 3 o'clock. End of this chapter. Chapter 1748. Han Fei looked at Bing Xue Chuling in confusion, wondering, what's next? Bing Xue Chuling was also surprised. I thought it would be tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. Who knew that it would be today? Seeing Han Fei's confusion, Bing Xue Chuling said, It said that the 36 black heavens have gathered in the Grand Purity Palace. Those who hate each other will have a chance to fight each other. Because in the land of the King Grave, The mermaids, the 100 demons, the sea humans, and many other hostile forces will force human beings to forget their grudges and work together to survive in the land of the King Grave. Han Fei sneered in his heart. So, they're giving us a chance to fight each other here? Bing Xue Chuling said, I'm afraid that some kings are watching in secret. I don't think they'll let anyone really get hurt here. Han Fei didn't believe that a fight could make up for the grudges. That was just a verbal excuse. Their real purpose was probably to see the abilities of the heavenly talents of the immortal palaces. Bing Xue Chuling said, You don't have to do too much. It's not good to expose too much. Han Fei was about to nod when the old turtle suddenly said in his heart, I didn't sense any king's gaze at all. Han Fei's eyes turned cold. There must be a trap. Han Fei said to Bing Xue Chuling, If something happens later, you can do your best. Perhaps this battle has been brought forward as a ploy. Bing Xue Chuling was briefly stunned. After a moment of silence, she said, Got it. Ji Qin smiled and said, Everyone will have to go to the land of the King Grave in 2 days. Every time we enter the land of the King Grave, we'll run into great enemies like the mermaids. They have the advantage in numbers, so we have to stick together. Whatever grudges we have, let's fight in today's battle. From now on, we must fight the sea demons together on the trip to the land of the King Grave. The people of the immortal palaces seemed to have known that. So, they didn't react to Ji Qin's proposal. Ji Qin said, Because we don't want to hurt each other, there's no need to hide this battle. It's on the heavenly fault ancient tree. As for the reward for this spar, it's better than last time. It's a heavenly fault star fruit. Some people were surprised. The Supreme Purity Palace is really willing to pay a heavy price. The heavenly fault star fruit would bear fruit once every 300 years. Each time, there would only be one. It contained the essence of the Tao within, and it could help one comprehend and break through. It could also quickly recover from physical injuries, and it could even be used as a supreme treasure to resist heavenly tribulation. Since they even took out such a treasure, it could be seen that the Sky Palace was extremely wealthy. Han Fei glanced at ice and snow. Is it very valuable? Bing Xue Chuling did not know whether to laugh or cry. It's worth it, isn't it? This fruit was indeed rare. However, I'm afraid it won't be easy to obtain it. Han Fei smiled. What's not simple about it? Ji Qin said, We're all quite strong, and we're not fighting in the void. Then, the Heavenfall Ancient Tree would be the battlefield. Whoever reached the top first would be the winner. Of course, in order to not harm the harmony, there are naturally restrictions. Everyone is not allowed to damage even half a leaf of the ancient heavenly fault tree. Otherwise, it will be considered as your loss, and you are not allowed to attack again. Han Fei said lightly, This is just a treasure hunt. How can it be considered competition? Ice and Snow said, How can it be so simple? On the Golden Crow Heaven side, 6 people stood up in a row. The person who led them chuckled and said, Goddess Chuling, fellow Cultivator Snow battle, please. Ice and Snow said, Those who have grudges against each other can find opponents here. 2 or more parties climb at the same time. Not everyone soars into the sky to grab the treasure. You have to defeat your opponent first before you can continue to climb to the top. Han Fei rolled his eyes. Then you'll have grudges against each other, won't you? Ice and Snow said, For the immortal palaces that have no grudges against each other, this is simply a competition for treasures. There will be winners and losers, and there will be no personal grudges. But if there are grudges against each other, they will also represent the interests of their respective immortal palaces, so they won't easily let their opponents win. Han Fei glanced at the Golden Crow Heaven. 2 against 6. It's not worth it. Ice and Snow said, They can only send 2 people. Han Fei said with a smile, That's not bad. Let's have a try. The Heavenly Fall Tree was 300,000 meters high. When the so-called sparring began, every leaf on the Heaven Fault Ancient Tree actually began to light up. Under the terrifying gravity, everyone seemed to be carrying a mountain on their shoulders. Under such gravity, did they need to climb to the top of the Heavenly Fault Tree? First of all, they had to control their strength. Of course, for the heavenly talents of the immortal palaces, it was just a basic skill, and no one thought it was inappropriate. Han Fei felt the pressure on his body. Under such conditions, his strength would be suppressed by about 50%. If even he was suppressed by nearly 50%, the others would be even worse. Ice and Snow said, "We are still on the ground. When we start a climb, the gravity will be different for every meter we climb. So, we need to adjust our strength control in time." Han Fei narrowed his eyes slightly. "Interesting. You mean, the higher we go, the more difficult it will be. In the end, our strength may be suppressed to less than 10%? Ice and Snow nodded. To be precise, when we reach a height of 100,000 meters, our strength will only be 10% or 20% of our peak state. Any higher, and it will be more difficult. When the Golden Crow Heaven selected 2 people, Han Fei saw that one of them was the one who had been sitting in the front seat. Ice and Snow seemed to have seen it coming and said telepathically, "These 2 are both candidates for the king of the Golden Crow Heaven. The thinner one is called Xiahai. His spiritual beast is a fire cloud whale. It is said that he is the most likely candidate to become a king. His weapon is the green fire ruler, a sea-quelling bizarre treasure, which has been tempered by the spiritual fire of heaven and earth. The other one is called Tianning. His spiritual beast is a lava tortoise, which has amazing defensive power. He has an indestructible fire body, which is also a defensive power." Xiahai said lightly, "I don't care how Jin Quan died. However, the Snow God's palace is too disrespectful to the Golden Crow Heaven. This time, we can put an end to it. Holy girl, what do you think?" Ice and Snow said, "Fellow cultivator Xiahai, it's time to put an end to the Golden Crow Heaven and the Snow God's palace. After this, we have nothing to do with each other." "Nothing to do with each other? Huh, that's easy for you to say. I wonder where you get the confidence to say that." Han Fei clasped his hands behind his back and looked up. "You talk too much. When do we start?" Xiahai and Tianning both looked at Han Fei with unfriendly faces. Not long after Han Fei finished speaking, Ji Chun said, "Everyone, with Yi Luo as the messenger, I hereby announce the start of the Battle of Inheritance." The leaves moved with the wind, and the disciples of the palaces under the tree all found their opponents. When the nearest leaf broke with a cracking sound, the chosen leaped up as if the gravity on their bodies wasn't gravity at all. Wow, Han Fei and Bingxue Chuling also stepped into the air. Tianheng seemed to have been prepared. Instead of chasing after them, his first step was to reach out and touch Han Fei's ice mask. The mysterious thing about Saint Xuezhan was the mask on his face. If the mask was broken, Xuezhan would definitely lose face. But how could Han Fei let him do that? In terms of reaction speed, Han Fei was even faster. He leaned back, tilted his head slightly, and waved his hand, activating the closed distance technique. Smack! A slap directly hit Tianheng's face. The scene, and the instant surprise, many venerables were dumbfounded. Hiss! A woman from the glazed sky took a deep breath and said, "Is Tianheng stupid? Xuezhan just showed the power of space. How dare he try to lift his mask at the beginning? Isn't he looking for trouble?" Someone next door said, "Tianheng is a half-king, and Saint Xuezhan is only a peak-level venerable. However, in terms of endurance, speed, and reaction speed, he has surpassed Tianheng. This can only mean that either Xuezhan's current realm is fake, or he has the ability to fight across realms." Someone chuckled. "A peak-level venerable? It's impossible. It's said that Xuezhan once killed a half-king in a few seconds." At that time, Han Fei from the Avengers said that there was a demi-king realm cultivator in the snow battle. Now he's hiding it because he wants to use it in the king grave. Tianheng didn't catch Han Fei's mask, but was slapped in the face. How could he bear it? Because in this competition, not even a leaf could be damaged. Han Fei didn't use much strength at all. But the sound was very crisp, which was a great slap to the face of the Golden Crow Heaven. Xiahai snorted. "Idiot, where's your shield?" Tianheng couldn't say it out loud. "In fact, I have an invisible shield. However, Xuezhan just used the power of space. This guy passed the invisible shield and slapped me in the face. Tian Hung gritted his teeth and soared into the sky with a swish. He swore that today, not only would he drag Han Fei down, but he would also kill Shui Zhan in the King Grave one day. Ring of Fire, Heavenly Shield. Chilla. At this moment, most people were still in the air and hadn't even reached the first branch, including Han Fei. Above Han Fei's head, a ring of fire with a diameter of 100 meters appeared, and there seemed to be a formation blocking the way. If Han Fei rushed forward, of course, he could break through the ring of fire, but the power caused would inevitably cause damage. Then Han Fei's figure disappeared with a hum. With a star transposition, he appeared above the ring of fire in the next moment. Han Fei's voice was leisurely. Idiot. Chapter 1749. After all, Han Fei was the holy child of the Snow God's temple, and his status was only below that of the Snow Lady. In other words, Han Fei's real status should be equal to that of the strongest person below the King realm in the Grand Purity Palace. Therefore, in everyone's opinion, it was natural that Tian Hung of the Golden Crow Heaven couldn't stop Han Fei. Although there were inner and outer domains in the 36 Xuantians, it didn't mean that the outer domain was necessarily worse than the inner domain. There were channels and resources on both sides. Even if the quality of the spiritual energy and the environment in the outer domain were a bit poor, they were just lucky, right? Therefore, it was reasonable for Shui Zhan to be the holy child. After all, Shui Zhan was suddenly released by the Snow Lady for the land of the fallen king. But Shui Zhan might be a heavenly talent that the Snow Lady had cultivated for many years. At this moment, seeing that he couldn't stop Han Fei, Tian Hung also quickly chased after him. Compared to Tian Hung, Bingxue Chuling of Xiahai had fought dozens of times. Because she didn't use too much strength, the battle between the two was very subtle. For example, at this moment, Xiahai gathered a wisp of red fire and pointed it at Bingxue Chuling. Bingxue Chuling naturally wouldn't underestimate it. She skillfully pointed out a snowflake with her fingertip. However, neither the red fire nor the snowflake exploded, but rushed into the two's bodies. As the saying goes, the skilled are bold. Both of them were demi-kings, so they could still bear the energy in their bodies. If it were in the past, Bingxue Chuling might not be willing to do this, because the exchange of yin and yang would only trigger her cold body. She could only slowly absorb the energy of the fire element. But now, Bingxue Chuling had recovered from her serious illness and found all kinds of vitality resources to replenish her vitality. She was no longer the same as before, so Xiahai couldn't take advantage of her at all. At this moment, high in the sky, two people fell from the tree. The two changed their techniques in midair. One was good at hidden weapons, and the other was bursting with healing light. At first glance, it was obvious that they were the heavenly talents of the Medicine King Heaven and the 10,000 Poison Heaven. Wherever they passed, cracks appeared in the void because of the poison. It could be seen how poisonous the heavenly talents of the 10,000 Poison Heaven were. Just then, before the two touched the ground, they separated, each retreating 100 feet, and then rushed up again. On the other side, sound waves rippled. On the other hand, there was a woman playing the zither in the Brahma heaven. The sound of the zither rustled and occasionally rushed. It was lonely, as if one was in hell. As for the other woman, she held a staff in her hand and was surrounded by colorful clouds. If she wasn't a powerful being from Dreamweaver's sky, who else could she be? The battle had only just begun. Many experts were displaying their abilities. Except for Han Fei, who seemed to be at the peak stage of the Venerable Realm, the others were all at the Half-King Realm. At this moment, the half-step monarchs were using their abilities, yet not a single one of them was struck down. It was clear that these people were all quite strong. Regardless of whether it was the inner or outer regions, the gap between the top experts was never that great. At the highest point, there were already people who rushed to 6,000 zhang. There was a person who actually used a soul blade to snipe at the enemy. Exclamations could be heard from below the tree. Quick, look! Beitang Xian's heavenly mandate soul saber is one of the Wuji heaven's 4 great techniques. Someone sighed. The dragon subduing celestial realm has been weak for many years. It is said that Song Hongyu failed to slay the dragon and was injured instead. I wonder if his old injuries have healed. Someone shook his head slightly. I'm afraid not. Look, Song Hongyu's mouth is bleeding. Pooh, above the sky, a person fell from the sky and crashed directly to the ground. Under the tree, the person smashed a big pit, but he still looked fierce. At this moment, this person's clothes were torn, revealing the hideous dragon patterns on his body, which were flowing like blood. Humph! This person was Song Hongyu, who had just been hotly discussed. Even though he was defeated at this moment, his soaring energy was still shocking. Someone from the dragon's subduing celestial realm said, Hongyu, your injuries. Song Hongyu slightly raised his hand, waved it casually, and said in a dull voice, It's okay. Although the heavenly mandate soul saber is powerful, it can't seriously injure me. However, Beitang Xian's control is better than mine. He just used a trick. Swish, swish, swish among the branches and leaves of the heavenly falled ancient tree. The lowest one had rushed to 5,000 zhong high. Han Fei didn't sprint. At this moment, he had just reached 6,000 zhong. Han Fei felt that the gravity around him had increased a lot, and his strength had been suppressed to only about 30%. It must be the same for other people. At this moment, Tian Hung entangled with fire threads, intending to lock Han Fei. Han Fei originally wanted to use the Infinity Water and Blade Purgatory to tie up these people directly. However, the Infinity Water was the treasure of the shadowless heaven. If he threw it out now, would anyone recognize it? He just casually attacked, and someone from the Taishian heaven recognized it as the 100 Beasts' soul-suppressing roar. If he used the Infinity Water and was recognized again, they would definitely be suspicious of him. With this in mind, Han Fei stretched out his hand and grabbed the void. The next moment, he directly attacked Tian Hung with the 100 Beasts' soul-devouring roar. Cough! Tian Hung grunted. Han Fei frowned. This person's soul power was not weak, much stronger than that of Huo Xian just now. However, the next moment, Han Fei took out a void crack and slashed it directly on Tian Hung. However, the flames wound into the void and actually resisted the void crack. This alone was enough to prove that Tian Heng's strength was extraordinary. However, in the next second, two dark blue scimitars instantly swept past this person. Puff, puff at that moment, under the heavenly fault ancient tree. Everyone couldn't help but be shocked. They saw Tian Hung was directly cut into 4 pieces and then slapped down by Han Fei. How could they not know whether Tian Hung was strong or not? He was a strong cultivator famous for his defensive power. However, he was directly cut into several pieces and lost. For a strong cultivator in the Half-King realm, those who could kill you could destroy your soul and would not give you a chance to be reborn from a drop of blood. The Golden Crow Heaven was even more humiliated this time. Huo Xian and the others below even shouted, How is it possible? Tian Heng's physique is extremely strong, and his shield is unparalleled. How could he be cut down so easily? Someone glanced sideways. It's his double scimitars. Those scimitars seemed to be invisible blades. As soon as this person finished shouting, he saw the dark blue double scimitars submerge into Han Fei's body again. Han Fei rarely used the Blades of Hope. Now, because of a small fight, using other methods was very likely to damage the Heavenly Fault ancient tree and cause him to be eliminated. The Blades of Hope could ignore arrays, shields, and the existence of matter. If Tian Hung resisted with his soul power, just now, he might have been able to resist it. However, Han Fei's previous attacks were already extraordinary. How could Tian Hung expect that Han Fei still had a backup plan? Tian Heng's defeat was seen by many people. A strong cultivator of the Grand Purity Palace below secretly noted that the holy child Shui Zhan carried the nameless double scimitars on his back, which were suspected to be sea-quelling bizarre treasures that could ignore shields and armor. This so-called competition, in a way, was also a way for others to understand you. Han Fei disguised as the holy child and naturally attracted a lot of attention as a newcomer. Now, Han Fei had already shown some of his skills. Xiahai also saw Han Fei's moves. The Golden Crow Heaven had already lost 2 rounds. If he lost again, it would be a complete defeat. How could he save his face? Xiaohai frowned. The Golden Crow Heaven could be defeated, but not by the Snow God's palace. If he really lost, didn't it mean that the Golden Crow Heaven was not even as good as the Snow God's palace? How could he keep his reputation as the 4th strongest cultivator? Oop, in the blink of an eye, when Han Fei defeated Tian Heng, a large green ruler appeared in Xiaohai's hand. With a swish, flames danced on the ruler's body. Someone exclaimed, "It's the green lotus fire. He's even using the heaven and earth spiritual fire. Isn't he afraid of touching the heavenly fault ancient tree?" The fire was like a snake, and the lines of fire were like silk. Being illuminated by the heaven and earth spiritual fire, Bing Xue Chuling's body was immediately covered with frost. However, Bing Xue Chuling was also a half-step monarch. Although she had been ambushed in the hurricane before, it was because she had been ambushed by multiple half-step monarchs. At this moment, a red line appeared on Bing Xue Chuling's forehead. A blue sea leech formed an ice barrier, blocking the power of the heaven and earth spiritual fire. Someone was surprised. It's the ice sea leech. Isn't it said that every time Bing Xue Chuling uses it, her injury will be aggravated? Is it worth it to use it in this place? Bing Xue Chuling was the goddess of the Snow God's palace and represented the Snow God's palace. In this kind of competition, she certainly wouldn't be outdone, so the two fought fiercely. Bing Xue Chuling also tried to freeze Xiaohai's soul with the power of ice. Unfortunately, Bing Xue Chuling had just reached the half-king realm. Although her injury had recovered, she was still weaker than Xiaohai. Ahem, Bing Xue Chuling coughed. Xiaohai sneered, and a blue flame appeared in his eyes. The flame devoured the soul and pushed Bing Xue Chuling back. Bing Xue Chuling's mouth was bleeding, and she felt her soul was being suppressed. Suddenly, the two of them both felt the movement of the void and saw a void blade appear, trying to cut Xiaohai. Xiaohai had been paying attention to Han Fei and Tian Heng's defeat. How could he not be on guard at this moment? Of course, Xiaohai didn't want to fight 2 heavenly talents at the same level. The difference lay in the Tao. Saint Child Shuizhan's means were strange, and he couldn't fight fiercely. With a roar, a blue light flashed between Xiaohai's eyebrows, and he resisted the soul-devouring attack. He sneered, "It's fine if you use the same method once or twice, but if you use it again and again, do you think you're invincible in the half-king realm?" However, as soon as Xiaohai said this, he suddenly felt his body tighten, only to see that a thread of spiritual energy had gathered in Han Fei's hand. Han Fei sneered, "You should have been on guard, so the 100 bee soul devouring roar was never a unique skill." The next moment, without Han Fei doing anything, an ice hammer broke Xiaohai's body and nailed him to the ground. At this time, Han Fei used a star transposition and appeared next to Xiaohai, who was about to break free from the spiritual energy thread. Smack, it was a loud slap, and everyone who heard it narrowed their eyes. Who would have expected that the Golden Crow Heaven, ranked 4th among the 36 Black Heavens, would be defeated 3 times in a row? For a time, there were many people gloating over the misfortune of others. Chapter 1750. After finishing off the 2 half-monarch elites of the Golden Crow Heaven, Han Fei and Bing Xue Chuling arrived at an altitude of 100,000 feet. Han Fei did not help Bing Xue Chuling. He decided to save his spirit-gatherer means for the king-perished land. It should be enough for him to reveal it now. At a height of 100,000 feet, Han Fei's strength was compressed to less than 20%. At that moment, 8 people had been eliminated. It could be said to be an extremely small number. The old turtle said, "Such battles are more difficult the higher you go." At a height of 200,000 feet, everyone's strength will probably be reduced to less than 5%. When that time comes, it will be time for the real battle. You have to hold back later. The corners of Han Fei's mouth curled up under his mask. Half of my strength is at least at the peak of a high-level supremacy. This is without using my Great Tao. My Great Tao powers are too powerful. If I use them here, I'm afraid I'll scare them. I'm not here to fight. As the saying goes, first come, first served. Take your time. I'll snatch the item first. In the blink of an eye, Han Fei took advantage of the battle to soar more than 8,000 feet into the air, almost reaching a height of 200,000 feet. This speed was already extremely fast, and it required him to constantly adjust the strength of his body. Now, there were only 8 people who had reached this height, including Han Fei. Of these 8 people, one was Grand Purity Palace's Ji Chun, Sword God Palace's Jian Hui, Glass Heaven's Lu Ran, Immeasurable Heaven's Li Kaitian, Limitless Heaven's Beitang Xian, as well as a towering man and a veiled woman. Han Fei did not need to introduce himself to these 2 people he did not know. He could already hear the discussions below. Someone said, "I never expected the top 8 to appear so quickly." Ji Chen's opponent is definitely Jian Hui. Immeasurable Heaven's Li Kaitian and Limitless Heaven's Beitang Xian are opponents. Glass Heaven's Lu Ran and Dreamweaver Heaven's Nan Gong Yu are hard to predict. As for the remaining, Snow God Palace's Shui Zhan is considered a dark horse, but he's probably in trouble if he encounters Chaos Heaven's Wu Hao. Someone said with a smile, "I have some objections. If he were to encounter Wu Hao outside, there's no way he'll be his match. But in the battle for the Heavenly Fault Tree, it's a battle of the most minute means. Wu Hao's attacks are too ruthless, and his strength is too great. If he can't hold back, he will be eliminated." Someone else said, "That Shui Zhan is also quite extraordinary. First it was Huo Xian, then it was Tian Heng, and then Xiao Hai. The 3 great king-level candidates of the Golden Crow Heaven were all dragged down by him alone. With such methods, no wonder he dared to be so domineering today. He also has confidence." As the crowd discussed, Han Fei learned that his opponent's name was Wu Hao. He came from the Chaos Heavens, ranked 2nd among the 36 immortal palaces. According to what Han Fei knew, the Chaos Heavens and the Grand Pure Palace were not birds of a feather. The Primal Chaos Immortal Palace was full of talented people. They stood firmly in the 2nd place of the 36 profound heavens. Even the Limitless Heavens had to give up their position obediently because of their strength. At this moment, Wu Hao looked at Han Fei too. Originally, the 2 of them had not interacted before, and Wu Hao did not expect the mysterious man from the Snow God Palace to come. However, since he was already here, Wu Hao naturally wouldn't show any mercy. However, Wu Hao didn't continue fighting. He raised his head and looked at the sky. Han Fei immediately understood what Wu Hao meant. "I'll wait for you there." Han Fei thought to himself that Wu Hao was very shrewd. Han Fei could tell at a glance that he had an extremely strong physique. And in the Heavenly Fault Tree's array, the higher one climbed, the greater the pressure. It made it harder to use one's strength, and physique became the key to victory. Unfortunately, Wu Hao had such thoughts, but he did not know that Han Fei had the same thoughts. Han Fei thought that it was no secret that he was a body-tempering cultivator, nor was there anything worth hiding. Therefore, the 2 of them soared into the sky with a swoosh, passing everyone else and rushing to a height of 200,000 feet. At the same time, Ji Chun, Jian Hui, and company took a glance as they fought and climbed. However, when they saw that Han Fei's opponent was Wu Hao, they heaved a sigh of relief. Wu Hao's strength was in no way weaker than theirs. If they were to really fight, they might not even be able to beat him. Shui Zhan might have some combat strength, but he was still lacking when facing Wu Hao. They saw through Wu Hao's purpose of climbing to a height of 200,000 feet. That was the fighting style of the body-tempering cultivator. However, what they didn't expect was that Han Fei followed them without hesitation and jumped up. Under the tree, someone sneered, "I'm afraid that Shui Zhan doesn't know the horror of the body-tempering cultivator. Wu Hao is half a king through body tempering. His strength is so strong that few people in the same realm can defeat him." Someone shook his head slightly. After all, Saint Child Shui Zhan has just entered the secular world and hasn't experienced the brutal beating of the strong. After this battle, he will understand a lot. However, at a height of 200,000 feet, when Han Fei arrived, he saw Wu Hao rushing at him with a close-range combat method. Judging from Wu Hao's attack, Han Fei knew that this person's strength was just right, and the direction of the force was carefully considered, so it was difficult to damage the tree. However, at the moment when Wu Hao approached, Han Fei's snow-white cloak flew up. Under the cloak, Han Fei and Wu Hao exchanged more than 100 blows in an instant. Almost in an instant, there was no sound under the tree. Even at a height of 200,000 feet, the two of them only had 1 or 2% of their combat power left. However, for the body-tempering cultivators, they were the most powerful people in this kind of environment. Facing Wu Hao, Han Fei didn't retreat at all. It meant that Han Fei was also a body-tempering cultivator. Otherwise, he wouldn't have chosen close-range combat. BM, 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 he could only see power bursting forth from his fist. When it landed on his opponent's body, the power was absorbed by his opponent. Therefore, Han Fei and Wu Hao were at a stalemate for a while, and neither of them could defeat the other. Wu Hao was surprised. He didn't expect Han Fei to be so strong. There was also a body-tempering cultivator in the Snow God's temple. Besides, the power that Han Fei burst out was almost as terrifying as his own. Han Fei was also surprised. This guy's strength was so strong. Although he didn't use his full strength because he didn't want to make his power unstable, a casual punch was close to 10,000 waves. Logically speaking, no one would be able to withstand this attack. After all, power was pure power. After it burst forth, it would not be suppressed by the pressure, realm, speed, and so on. Therefore, it would not have much of a suppression effect on power. Wu Hao said in surprise, "You've already refined a golden body?" Han Fei was also surprised. Wu Hao was in a similar situation as him. He was also refining his golden body. However, his golden body wasn't completed yet. Immediately, Han Fei understood. He said, "You're walking on the great path of strength." Both of them pretended to be shocked, but Wu Hao was really shocked. This guy didn't walk on the great path of strength, but he could still match him in strength. This could only mean one thing. The other party had refined a golden body. Having refined a golden body when he was only at the venerable realm, it almost guaranteed that Han Fei would be invincible. At this moment, Wu Hao knew that the other party was probably the trump card of the Snow God's temple. It was the first time that Han Fei had met such a powerful opponent. Although the half-king he met in the ball cage was also walking on the great path of strength, his physique wasn't very strong. This guy was walking on a very similar path to Han Fei. Although this guy was only comparable to Han Fei because he was walking on the great path of strength, it meant that Han Fei still had room for improvement. After about 10 minutes, Ji Chun and the others had already surpassed Han Fei and Wu Hao, and the two of them were still fighting each other. But Wu Hao knew that the energy in his body was being consumed too fast. I can't go on like this. And Han Fei had already extended the void lines to the top of the tree. On the top of the tree, there was a stone platform made of floating stones, on which a spiritual fruit with white skin and purple spots was placed. Han Fei could even snatch the heavenly fault star fruit now, but he didn't want to expose the void lines. And theoretically, he had to defeat Wu Hao in order to continue climbing up. Han Fei wanted to win, but he couldn't exert his full strength. If he could easily defeat someone like Wu Hao, he would probably be taken care of, even if he entered the land of the King Grave. Therefore, Han Fei suddenly stopped and took 3 punches from Wu Hao in the face. With a swish, he teleported to the sky with the star's transposition. Wu Hao thought Han Fei was going to run and was about to chase him, when he found that the space suddenly changed. His body was sent thousands of meters away and hit a leaf. In order to adjust his strength, Wu Hao used too much force and broke a leaf. At this point, Han Fei smiled and flew to the sky. Swish, swish, not good. At that moment, Ji Chun, Jian Hui, Beitang Xian, and the others all changed their expressions. They didn't expect that Wu Hao couldn't stop this saint child Shui Zhan. Wu Hao was speechless. It was rare for him to meet such a strong opponent. He was having a good time, but he was suddenly played by someone. How annoying. The others followed and saw that Ji Chun and Jian Hui almost turned into 2 sword shadows and rushed at Han Fei. Han Fei sneered and also jumped out. In terms of speed, Han Fei didn't think he was inferior to anyone. Even if a king came, he could still run for a while. Therefore, when no one stopped him, Ji Chun, Jin and I, and Han Fei took the lead to reach the top under everyone's dumbfounded gazes. Han Fei grabbed the heavenly fault star fruit. Behind Han Fei, 3 figures chased after him. Han Fei grinned and flipped his hand, putting the heavenly fault star fruit into Forge the Universe. On Han Fei's fist, power surged. This punch, with violent power, blasted at Ji Chun and Jianhui. Han Fei said, "You underestimate your enemy." Chapter 1751. Han Fei had gotten the heavenly fault star fruit, which meant that the competition was over. Han Fei said that they had underestimated him because they all thought that Wu Hao could stop him and wouldn't give him a chance to move forward. However, Han Fei knew very well the characteristics of body tempering experts. When they fought to their heart's content, they might not be able to control their strength freely. Just now, it seemed that he took 3 punches, but in fact, it was because his aura surged and his punches were stronger than the last that Wu Hao was careless. Seeing that Han Fei punched with all his strength and didn't care about the heavenly fault ancient tree at all, Ji Chun was about to charge at him, but he immediately became a guardian of the heavenly fault ancient tree. At this moment, Ji Chun's sword cut through the void, opened a crack in the void, and drew Han Fei's fist mark into the void. When it was all over, Ji Chun saw that Han Fei was stepping down with his hands behind his back. As he walked, Han Fei said, "We're all from the 36 divine palaces. None of us is much stronger than the other. If you take the Snow God's temple seriously, the heavenly fault star fruit might not be mine today." Everyone saw that Han Fei had already walked down the tree, which had already declared the winner of this competition. Jianhui silently sheathed his sword. Beidang Xian took a deep look at Han Fei, and Dreamweaving and the girls of the Glass Palace also looked at Han Fei in shock. Nangonyu from Dream Sky smiled faintly. Interesting. I was indeed careless. Seeing that Han Fei had already grabbed the spiritual fruit, Wu Hao didn't speak, but was surprised that Han Fei had achieved the invincible golden body at this moment. It must be noted that the last tempering of the skull was quite difficult. His current golden body was stuck at the last step, and he couldn't grasp the key point. He didn't understand what was stopping him from making further breakthroughs. When Han Fei landed lightly on the ground, many people had already come down. Han Fei took out the heavenly fault star fruit in an ostentatious manner, which stimulated everyone's eyes. In Han Fei's eyes, information popped up. Name, Heavenly Fault Star Fruit. Introduction. The Heavenly Fault Ancient Tree absorbs the essence of heaven and earth all year round and produces a spiritual fruit. Each time, there would only be a single pill. It contained Tao Aura Essence, able to help one comprehend and break through. It could also quickly recover from physical injuries. It contained abundant energy, a top-grade great medicine. Level, venerable level, quality. Superb. Contains chaos energy, 30 strands. Note. After consumption, there is a small chance to activate the power of the bloodline in the body and enhance the power of the bloodline. The corners of Han Fei's mouth curled slightly. 30 wisps of chaotic energy. Just for this competition was worth it. 30 strands of chaos chi. If it was an ordinary person, they might even need to absorb it for over 100 years. In the end, it only took a moment for him to pluck it. If there was such a good thing, Han Fei would rather participate in the so-called battle of heavenly talents every day. Bing Xue Chuling heaved a long sigh in his heart, as expected of an expert like the master of the Immortal Palace. Perhaps he hadn't even used his true strength, but he had already won. The Snow God's Palace should not be at a disadvantage in this trip to the place where King perished with this person in charge. In the absence of the king, Ji Chun was the host. At this moment, Han Fei had won the heavenly fault star fruit. Although he was unwilling, he still had to put on a show. Otherwise, how could the Grand Purity Palace rule the 36 black heavens? Ji Chun said, "Everyone, the winner of this battle has been decided. You should have seen it. Fellow cultivator Xue Zhan really has a lot of means. He defeated many strong experts in a row, and in the end, he was even able to defeat Wu Hao. I don't think I need to tell you how strong he is, right? It wasn't until this moment that everyone realized something was wrong. Even Xia Hai and the others from the Golden Crow Heaven had already discovered the problem. Why was Saint Child Shuezhan so strong? This person was just a member of the Immortal Palace that wasn't ranked high in the Outer Domain. Even if he was lucky and had a high status, he was still from the Outer Domain. How could he be so strong? Immediately, someone speculated if the Snow God's palace had the ability to cultivate such a strong disciple. Why did they release him now? It was definitely not as simple as exploring the place where King perished at this time. Everyone realized the mystery of the Imperial Palace exploration after more than 30 years. Yes, Shuezhan must have been hidden for too long. If he wanted to explore the Imperial Palace, Shuezhan needed more experience. At this time, letting Shuezhan out to participate in the place where King perished was probably just Shuezhan's experience. At the same time, some people wondered, what if Shuezhan is really a peak-level venerable? A peak-level venerable is already strong enough to be close to a demi-king. What will happen if Shuezhan reaches the demi-king level? A series of thoughts appeared in everyone's mind. At this moment, Han Fei was undoubtedly feared by countless people. Of course, Han Fei didn't care. He was thinking, it's meaningless for me to use the heavenly fault star fruit now. I can continue to cultivate the pure mystic body now. Not to mention the rapid progress. I'm about to break through the bottleneck. And I've already experienced the bottleneck of the demi-king level. Once the strength in all aspects converged, my breakthrough is just a matter of time. Now, my bloodline has been improved by more than a little bit. My flesh and blood are tens of thousands of times better than when I was in the cage at this moment. It's not that my flesh and blood can't keep up, but there is still a gap in the power of my soul. As for the strengthening of his divine soul power, he naturally needed to hunt more. Han Fei licked the corner of his mouth and put away the heavenly fault star fruit. But at this moment, Wu Hao walked towards Han Fei. Wu Hao looked at Ji Chun. Is there anything else? Ji Chun shook his head. Today's meeting is just to get to know each other. I think everyone should already know each other. When we enter the place where the king perished, we should take care of each other. Wu Hao said, fellow cultivator Shuezhan, would you like to have a chat? Han Fei didn't want to chat with these people. He didn't believe that they would really become friends when they arrived at the place where the king perished. They would still hunt when they were supposed to. They were all heavenly talents, and all of them were made to be protagonists. Who will be convinced? So Han Fei nodded slightly. Okay, then I'll go back to my residence first. Under everyone's gaze, Han Fei and Wu Hao left. They were all body refining practitioners, so even if they used their buts to think, they would know that these two were most likely studying body refining. In fact, that was indeed the case. As soon as they entered the courtyard, Chu Hao cupped his fists. Fellow cultivator Shuezhan, I have something to ask you. It may be a bit abrupt. If you don't know how to answer, you don't have to. Han Fei said lightly. You want to ask about the forging of a golden body? Wu Hao nodded. Sure enough, he couldn't hide it from Han Fei. His purpose was too obvious. But to Wu Hao's surprise, Han Fei replied, I can tell you, but what can you give me in exchange? Immediately, a strange light burst out of Wu Hao's eyes, and he said, anything. I can exchange all my wealth for it. Han Fei said leisurely, all your wealth? How much is it? Wu Hao was taken aback for a moment. Does this need to be calculated carefully? Han Fei stretched out his hand. If you forge a golden body, your strength will be further improved. I won't embarrass you. 1,000,000 ultra-quality spiritual stones, 20,000 energy fruits, and 10 body refining techniques. If you agree to my conditions, I can give you the answer now. Wu Hao nodded. Okay. Han Fei. Han Fei thought that his ears were deceiving him. Damn it. I'm just extorting him, and this guy actually agreed? Isn't it too easy? Wu Hao said, I can give you 1,000,000 spiritual stones and 20,000 energy fruits now. The 10 body refining techniques are not complete for now. I have 4 of them and 6 of them. When we arrive at the place where the king died, I will ask someone to send them to the Snow God's temple. Brother Shuezhan, don't worry. Han Fei's heart skipped a beat. Wow, this thing seems to make money faster than robbing. He only regretted that he didn't ask for more just now. If he asked for more, the other party would definitely give him more. When Wu Hao really took out the resources, Han Fei didn't hide them and casually threw over the experience of tempering a golden body. Han Fei thought that even if Wu Hao had an indestructible golden body, so what? A golden body could only increase his strength by about 20%. With Wu Hao's strength, even if he was 20% stronger, how could he be a match for Han Fei? Besides, it was just a piece of experience which might not necessarily work. Maybe the king was just trying to sharpen his disciples. Han Fei didn't lose anything by selling the experience for so much money. Wu Hao grabbed the jade slip and quickly glanced at it. His eyes grew brighter and brighter. Finally, he thanked Han Fei and went into seclusion in excitement. Han Fei was still thinking about the sword talisman on the heavenly fault ancient tree. Just now, when he had just figured out something, the battle of the 36 mysterious heavens had already begun. When Han Fei appeared at the sword viewing platform again, it was already empty. However, Han Fei didn't care. He sat on the table and drank by himself. In less than half a day, a message flashed in the demon purification pot, and words appeared. Heaven Opening Sword Manual, Ultra Quality. Note: there was once a peerless expert who comprehended for 10,000 years and finally opened the gate of heaven. He created a sword art that can cut open the great Tao and break the void. After cultivating this sword art, one's killing intent is like a sword, and all techniques are like a sword. If one wants to open the sky, one must first find the path of the sword. Once the path of the sword is opened, one will master this art. Drawback: to practice the Heaven Opening Sword Manual, one must first find his own path of the sword. Deduction consumption: 1,000 strands of chaotic energy. Note: the path of the sword is hard to find. One must comprehend it on his own. Chapter 1752. When Han Fei saw this great technique, his heart was chilled. Are you kidding me? It's such a great technique, named Heaven Opening Sword Manual, but I have to find a path of swordsmanship? This thing, I don't practice swordsmanship. How can I know anything about swordsmanship? Although in Han Fei's opinion, using a sword and a knife were almost the same. However, if he really thought about it, sword cultivators had to condense a sword ball, erect a sword heart, and find a path of swordsmanship. It didn't appear in the path of knives. In other words, he did not have a deep understanding of the path of cultivating the saber. But in any case, this Heaven Opening Sword Manual was definitely a great technique. Even if he couldn't use it, hadn't Tang Ge found a path of swordsmanship? He would let him use it. In any case, in Han Fei's opinion, Tang Ge was Tang Ge and Tang Yin was Tang Yin. Tang Yin had experienced the second incarnation, and he might not become the main body. As for Tang Ge, he might be the main character. As for his own path of swordsmanship, when he was free, he would study swordsmanship. As the saying went, once you understand one, you will understand all. Once he had an epiphany, it might not be difficult for him to embark on the path of swordsmanship. Han Fei comforted himself and returned to the yard. These 2 days, Han Fei didn't go out. After all, this was the Grand Purity Palace. If he were to cause a ruckus here, he might be causing trouble for himself again. The land of the King Grave was about to open, and he couldn't stay in the Grand Purity Palace for long. When he came out of the land of the King Grave, he would embark on the road to the glass sky. Everything went smoothly. However, although Han Fei didn't cause trouble, the name of Holy Child Shuizhan had become famous in a small range. In the battle of the Heavenly Imperial Court, this guy who had just appeared actually won first place. His physique was comparable to Wu Hao's, and his means were enough to suppress the Golden Crow Heaven. Although Han Fei hadn't competed with the people of the Grand Purity Palace and the Wuji Heaven, no matter how strong they were, they wouldn't be much better than Wu Hao. Han Fei had a rough idea in his heart. Today, 2 days had passed. It was said that other people went to the auction and the treasure show, but Han Fei didn't attend any of them. When Bingxue Chuling came to call him, Han Fei came out of his cultivation. Bingxue Chuling said, "In another hour, we will gather and go to the land of the King Grave." Han Fei nodded slightly. "That's good. Although this place is good, the people are not good. It's better to leave early. Han Fei thought to himself, these guys from the Grand Purity Palace have never been beaten by society. If there was a chance, he would teach them a lesson at the place where King Wang died. 2 hours later, a total of 25 big ships appeared at the birth of the heavenly imperial city. Why 25? Naturally, it was because of Jiogong Tian and the future. After Han Fei boarded the ship, he asked in confusion, the Nine Palace Heaven has sealed off the Immortal Palace all year round. How did it survive in the inner area? The Snow Lady replied, the Nine Palace Heaven dismissed too many of its citizens. It could be said that many of the people in the 36 mysterious heavens were actually from the Nine Palace Heavens. After tens of thousands of years, many people were discovered one after another. As a result, the people of the Nine Palace Heavens never showed their faces and lived cautiously. However, if someone was prepared to attack the Nine Palace Heaven, it would attract some experts. Furthermore, the Nine Palaces Heaven formation is unparalleled, and the Immortal Palace is so well hidden that no one has been able to find it. Han Fei thought, that's strange. It seems that old Han has made a lot of preparations. Then the Snow Lady said, you are in the limelight. You must be careful on this trip. Someone will hunt you. Han Fei licked the corner of his mouth slightly and sneered. That's exactly what I want. In Secret Realms, there were two situations, hunting and being hunted. Han Fei had long been used to it. Whether it was hunting sea demons or human powerhouses, there was no difference in essence. As long as they were his enemies, sea demons should be killed and human beings should be slaughtered. There was no difference. The Snow Lady didn't restrict Han Fei's behavior. Would the Great Escape from 100,000 years ago happen again? It all depended on the last tens of thousands of years. At this time, the Snow God's palace was not afraid of offending other immortal palaces. Everyone wanted to find opportunities in the Imperial Palace. Others knew what the Snow Lady was thinking, and they had also secretly prepared other means. Therefore, even the kings of the Grand Purity Palace didn't feel much about Han Fei's victory this time. They even thought that it was too early for the Holy Child to fight against the Snow Lady. Some people also thought that since the Snow Lady had begun to make this matter public, it seemed that their side had to play a backup plan. Let's go. On the big ship of the Grand Purity Palace, a king gave an order, which spread to all the big ships of the Immortal Palaces. The hulls of the major ships left the port and began to charge. Swish, swish, swish. Han Fei looked at the big ships that broke through the void in midair and thought to himself, what the F***CK are they if not spaceships? They were all the mounts of kings, shuttling all the way. Every hour, the big ship teleported about 12 times, about 8 million kilometers. More than 10 hours later, Han Fei was lying in his cabin, resting with his eyes closed. Suddenly, Han Fei opened his eyes. On Han Fei's chest, the mermaid's tear that had never lit up was emitting a faint blue light. Han Fei suddenly sat up, his eyes widening. The mermaid's tear is reacting? Is Xia Xiaochan nearby? With a swish, Han Fei appeared on the deck. Just when he was about to scan with his perception, he heard the Snow Lady say, we're almost at the place of the king grave. Han Fei frowned and secretly put away the mermaid's tear. Yes, since I sent Xia Xiaochan here, she must have also participated in the exploration of the place of the king grave this time. Since Xia Xiaochan was here, it was only a matter of time before he found her. At this moment, Han Fei's heart suddenly began to be excited. There were too many barriers between the Yin-Yang heaven and the inner area of the chaotic ocean. But today, he finally came out, and he was no longer a small fry who was only a hanging fisher. Now, he was comparable to a king. On the other side, in an undersea shuttle-shaped divine boat, a girl in a colorful dress with a delicate face was sitting cross-legged and resting. On the girl's shoulder, there was a round, dark red, fat starfish with 6 tentacles. It was lying on the ground without moving at all, as if it were sleeping soundly. Xia Xiaochan instantly woke up. At that moment, she seemed to feel an inexplicable touch in her heart, as if something important had appeared. However, as soon as she opened her eyes, the feeling disappeared. Holiu, the big starfish, grunted and said, are you sleeping too? Why don't we sleep at home? Why do you have to run to such a dangerous place? I'm not afraid. I'm just worried about your safety. Shut up. If you keep eating and sleeping, you'll sleep like a pig. The big starfish immediately scratched its tentacles and said, That's impossible. How can I be that kind of inferior creature? I'm now a venerable. As long as I make a little progress, I will become an advanced venerable. Bah, if I hadn't given you so many resources, how could you eat like this? You can't fight, and your defense is not good. After this trip to the place of the king grave, you must break through to the advanced venerable realm. Otherwise, I will leave you in the place of the king grave and let you stay there for 300 years. No, starfish can't stand that. Unless you send me 10 clam girls to massage starfish every day, I can consider it. Master hexagon starfish was stung to the ground like a mass of mucus. It didn't seem to move, but it reappeared on Xia Xiaochan's shoulder in the next second. At this moment, there was a knock on the cabin door, and someone outside said, Princess Mingzhu, we're almost at the place of the king grave. The two princes have been waiting for a long time. Tell them to get lost. Xia Xiaochan got up, casually combed her hair with her hands, and tied it with a red ribbon. She stretched out her hands, and 2 black shadows appeared in her hands. Xia Xiaochan was wrapped in a black scale battle suit inch by inch, and soon she was wrapped in it. BM Xia Xiaochan, who was ready to go, walked out with a knife and saw 2 young men. One was sitting on the chair, playing with pearls, and the other was leaning against the wall, playing with a dagger. Immediately, Xia Xiaochan was furious. She disappeared in a flash, and her knife was like a shadow. Gotcha! A cold light flashed. The pearl in the guy's hand was cut into 2 pieces, and the chair he was sitting on collapsed. Xia Xiaochan pointed her knife at them. By mewling, Siti Yu Hong, you'd better disappear in front of me. Otherwise, I'll chop both of you up. The guy who was playing with the dagger shrugged and said with a smile, Mingzhu, we're going to the land of death. There are many experts there, and you haven't even entered the half-monarch realm. So how can you not have my protection? As for Siti Yu Hong, he should get lost. Siti Yu Hong, who had dodged Xia Xiaochan's attack, looked unkindly at Bai Muling. Bai Muling, don't you know what bloodline you have? A mixed blood child of a flood serpent, and a mermaid dares to spout nonsense here? Siti Yu Hong, are you courting death? For a moment, the 2 of them were at loggerheads, which made Xia Xiaochan quite annoyed. All of you shut up. At this moment, a white-haired merman race elder entered the cabin. She heard the man say, Princess Mingzhu, this trip is very dangerous. The reason why you're participating is to help you break through to the half-monarch realm. Therefore, if the princess ran away without permission, this old man will make it clear to Dian Wang that being grounded for 100 years is not a joke. Humph!